because I want to actually.
That is the fastest that's ever done, recording in progress. It's normally like 2 minutes of sitting there waiting while it thinks about it. Right, folks, welcome back. Good evening. It is episode 73, 73, I think, yeah.
I don't know. I
73.
don't know your
I have to
numbers.
look at the numbers before I start. Tonight I'm joined by the one, the only Rob Jones of Off the Arrow Shelf. This is the one the Trad Sniper's been waiting for,
Why?
just for you, Lee.
Hello. Why have you been waiting for me to talk? Not know anything interesting to say.
You are the doyen of trad archery, aren't
Oh
you?
no, no. I think there's far more knowledgeable people than me. I'm still learning. I've only been doing it for about 15 years, so I'm still learning. Early years.
We all are, aren't we? So, how did you get into it? Where did it
Oh,
start?
right. Okay. I was explaining this to some people today. I'd done some sort of target when I was about 16. I'd messed up my O levels. That
Yeah.
gives you an indication how old I am. And I went to Tech College, and there was like an evening thing that done in the sports hall by an archer when they just had little fiberglass bows, aluminium arrows,
Yeah.
and um, some of you might have seen it where you have like insulation foam down the front of the bow with a pin, and that's your sight.
Yes.
And I had a bit of a go at that. I thought, oh yeah, this is quite interesting. And then that folded, and then I went off to university, met my other half, Sharon, and we liked doing unusual things on our wedding anniversaries. So this,
I'm the wrong person to say that to.
yeah, yeah. So it's like our first wedding anniversary. We hiked up to the top of Ben Nevis,
Nice.
and that was in June, and there was still a foot of snow up there.
Yeah.
And we'd done all the usual sort of things, like going away to Paris or going away for a city breaks, but we get bored. So we were down. We rented a cottage down in Cornwall, Devon border,
Yeah.
and we bumbled into the information centre there, and they had tourist information. They had I have a go taster session for field archery, and Sharon had always wanted to try archery but hadn't been able to at uni. I said, oh, well, let's give it a go. And we went down there. There's a guy that's set up. He's got a field with a simple range on there where he teaches you the basics.
Yeah.
And then he took you around like a 18 field course, or a field course with like 18 targets, different distances, and you'd shoot as many as you'd think. And we both did it, and it was like, oh, right. And he turned around and says, you're both quite good at this, and you seem to be quite enjoying it. And we went, yeah. So he gave us some numbers. We got home. We tried a few of them. Ended up joining or going up to a club in just outside Derby,
Yeah.
which was where Black Arrow were originally, Cox Bench.
Ha! You said cock.
You always got to lower the tone.
It's a
And
God given gift owned by 53 years of hard practice.
yes, Junior. And we had a go at it there. And I remember because they said, oh, we haven't got very light bows for you to start. So I started on something like a 32-pound recurve.
Yeah.
And Sharon picked up the same bow and shot it. And I shot it. And they went, right, okay. We went back and we tried it again. And they went, you're actually quite into this. And then that was about 15 years ago. A few years later, I got my coaching qualification, and that was it. And we started about a year after we joined the club. A guy called Mark Taylor, that was from Artemis Club. That was an NFAS club
Yeah.
because Black Arrow were an NFAS, but also had their own insurance. Joined because Artemis didn't have a wood. And he said, well, why don't you try joining in an NFAS and going out to some of the shoots? I thought, well, okay, we'll give it a go. And the first shoot we ever did was a paddock shoot.
Yeah.
And that was when you still had the lower wood. You had the big, like youth center
Yeah.
indoor catering, and we went there. And I think I may have broken a couple of arrows, and Sharon broke a couple of arrows, and we were just shooting out little takedown recurves. And I went, oh, actually, yeah, this is quite good fun. And I always remember because the following year we went, or that the first year that we went, I bought 5 raffle tickets for £1 each and walked away with 3 bottles of wine. And we thought, okay, this is quite good. And then the following year, Sharon went back, and I was shooting flat bow, I think then, and she actually won it in the ladies HT, and that was it. And it was basically we wanted something that we could do that was out of the house,
Yeah.
and this ticks an awful lot of the boxes. So yeah, and
See,
just to say that the one thing that I think really sealed it for us was there were a few of us that joined at the same time at Black Arrow, and Kev Bunting, who was the coach, and Cherry Peabody, who sadly passed away now. Cherry opened up her house just before Christmas, and they did this session. They did it. Pete, who as Cherry's partner, did a load of chilies for people and stuff like that. And they took us through everything from like how to serve your sering, and also how to start fletching your arrows or how to repair arrows. And for a group of us that all started at the same time, it was brilliant because basically, and I just got down making wooden arrows.
yeah,
And I loved it. And I thought, oh, I can actually, yeah, do this and I'll do this. And if I, like I was saying to you about, if I just offset and it basically meant that because I didn't like shooting metal arrows from the
yeah.
beginning and I swapped to woods. And about 6 months after I started, I swapped my recurve for a flat bow and I shot flat bow for must be about 6 years. And, but that, yeah, it's like slightly less than that because, and then swapped to HT, but it's always been wooden arrows.
Yeah.
And I've always found it because I work in IT, being able to kind of make something that is physical
Yeah.
and spending the time to sit down and go through the shafts and make sure they're all right and then cut them all down and then weigh them. And I'm a bit anal about making arrows. You've said this before. But I loved it and I loved making them. And then I got a reputation on people would say, oh, I've got this bow, what would work? And I'd say, oh, try this and this and this. And I just really enjoyed it. And because of they did that, it saved us a ton of money because wooden
Yeah.
arrows are fragile compared to carbons. And we got hooked, and that's when I got on really well with Kev, and Kev was the coach, and I learned an awful lot from coaching from him. And he was a wooden arrow flinger as well, and we just that was it, and it just snowballed from there. And then I got my coaching qualification, and I stayed on there for a few years, and then we moved away, so it was a bit harder to get to. But yeah, that's how we got there. It's basically just a afternoon archery session, and that was yeah, it must be about 15 years ago.
Oh, it's more addictive than crack, isn't it? Archery.
It can be. It's one of those things. I got really into it, and I miss shooting now just because of family commitments, life, and everything else.
Yeah.
It makes it a lot harder. But I call it the light bulb moment when you're showing somebody. It's like today. I had a father and son. Son's 17. I'm not sure how old the father was. Come down and have a go session at the wood.
Yeah.
Which is why I was a bit late for getting here. Sorry, folks. Um, and it was like the second arrow he shot, and he just delivered it perfectly into the target. And then we went around to some of the other targets, and he said, "Oh, we've got to one, which is a oh, you haven't seen the new shots. I won't
No.
give too much away. But there's a new shot at the wood, and there's a bank, and there's a Komodo dragon." And his first one just went off to the side. I said to him, "Well, what do you think's he did?" And he said, "Oh, well, I moved my arm." I said, "Okay, we'll try again." And his second one went straight into the 24.
Nice.
Absolutely perfect shot. And he said, and I said, "How does that feel?" He said, "That felt really good." And I love that moment. I've been incredibly fortunate to be able to coach some people and see that light bulb moment.
Yeah.
But see the light bulb moment not because of just getting a good shot, but them being able to understand it and
Yeah.
why they've got that good shot. And I've done some work with some people who've got learning difficulties, and I think it's even more important for them. And when they get that kind of shot, it's like, oh yeah, I've got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy that bit. So that's, it's like tomorrow. Today you were down at the range, our range this morning. I was coaching this afternoon, and then tomorrow I've got a group that's coming down. So I'll be coaching from 10 o'clock till probably about 3 o'clock again tomorrow. So it's a huge commitment, but from a selfish point of view, I get quite a lot back from it as
Yeah.
well, and I quite like that.
I know when you weren't shooting a great deal, you said you were more enjoying the coaching than the shooting, weren't you?
Yeah,
Bringing people in.
yeah, and I think it, from a coaching point of view, there's two elements. There's the coaching for improvement. So you've got somebody who's already an archer and they want to improve.
Yeah.
And then you've got that kind of first stage where you're not necessarily a coach, you're more like an instructor.
Yeah.
You're telling somebody how to do it, you're instructing them. And then there's a transition period where it goes from you sort of telling them, okay, this is what you need to do, this is where you need to be, to, okay, the reason we're telling you to do this is because if you get your hand position wrong, you twist your bow around, and then they start understanding that.
Yeah.
Then there's transition. It goes from you instructing them to them being able to control their own shot and their own shot sequence, and they begin to feel, oh right, yeah, okay, that does feel right. And I think there's too much emphasis on coaching out the bad habits rather than reminding them the good bits.
Yeah.
Because saying to you today, coming up and trying to work out where your anchor's going to be, then you want to try and get that anchor. And there were a few times that you were shooting and you were getting a beautiful release.
Yeah.
But you're trying to think, well, okay, why wasn't it quite going? Oh, hang on, my anchor was moving, and it's trying to get that, and it's going to take you a while because you're kind of going from like a trigger release to like a finger release. And
well, you picked up several times, didn't you, that I was, instead of having hand like that, because I've shot for years like that, I was coming up and
you're twisting
the
that
string.
Yeah, you're twisting that string, and the thing being is you're trying to unlearn, relearn muscle memory.
Yeah.
And if you've been doing something for so long, it's really, really hard.
Yeah.
Very, very hard. And it's just basically incremental steps. It's trying to get things, because you've had some beautiful, really smooth releases today. Yeah. And but as I said to you, you're trying to bear shaft tune. You're not necessarily in a position to be able to do that, because you've got to get that consistency right.
Yeah.
That's why I gave you that lighter bow just to begin with, so you can try and work out where that anchor position is going to be. And I've got contacts in today, but if you're shooting in glasses, there's a lot of bare bow archers that will anchor really, really high. And the problem where that's concerned is it changes with the shape of your glasses, and it also changes your perspective. It's like, I remember Kev, what he did was he actually had a set of archery glasses made where he actually had it offset so that his vision was still the same.
Yeah.
And he had to go into the opticians and explain why he wanted it, so that when he turned, because he had astigmatism, he wanted to make sure that he still had the same focus.
Yeah.
So it was all these little things that come in, and it's really a case of building on them and trying to have that really good foundation to begin with.
And one of my biggest problems is I have absolutely bugger all patience, and I expect to put the compound down, pick the trad bow up, and within 2 weeks I want to be shooting like I was with a compound, and it's just not going to happen. I've got to accept it's going to take time.
Which do you think is easier, the compound or the trad?
I think the compound is easier to get competent with quickly, but then you've got degrees of accuracy you're expecting as well. And when you shoot a compound, people automatically presume you're going to punch the centre out of everything, whereas that's not expected from a trad bow.
No, and I think that's you've hit that, because with a compound bow, there's so much of the mechanics associated with it, and the aspect of like drawing back and the being able to hold it and have that time to
Yeah,
be able to hold and to be steady and to be able to aim. But the flip side of that is that you're expected to be that much more accurate.
yeah,
Now with a trad bow, there's so many different variables because you're holding at full draw the full weight of that bow.
yeah,
And that's completely different. And that means you're up here and you can't stay for a long period.
yeah,
And if you do start staying for a long period, unless you are really fit, your muscles will start to ache, and then you start getting the shakes and
yeah.
things just deteriorate. And also, a lot of trad bows are not designed to be held for a long period. You don't want to hold a long bow for a long period.
Was it 5 seconds, I reckon, after you've been a full draw with an English longbow, the limbs start losing efficiency?
I'm not sure of the exact time, but I know what happens is that the actual issue that you have is that a bow is a spring at the end of the day.
Yeah,
And if you overuse a spring, then you get a change of efficiency.
yeah,
And the springs that we're talking about in a lot of trad bows are wood.
yeah,
You know how, there's only so many times you can like bend a piece of wood before it starts breaking and the
yes,
threads start breaking. So what you want to be able to do is you want to be able to come up, you want to be able to hit your anchor, have that moment of stillness, or when at the point at which you can commit.
yeah,
And if you can't, you just come down. And that's the hardest lesson. I wrote something about this years ago. And I think the hardest lesson in archery, because it's all about the psychology of you releasing the arrow to hit the target, the hardest lesson is to realize when you are up here, you can't. You
yeah,
got to come down. And I remember talking to various people that I've coached about this, and there's techniques that you can use, but you've got to have that self-confidence and control to be able to do it.
yeah,
Because otherwise, it's like Joel Turner says, you don't have a controlled shot. And as soon as you've not got a controlled shot, that shot's dangerous potentially. Yeah. And I say dangerous not in the thought of, it could fling off and hit somebody. It's dangerous because you start setting kind of your brain in and thinking, well, I'll make that shot. And if the shot happens to end up being a scoring arrow,
yeah,
a good scoring arrow, you'll begin to think, I don't need to be that controlled in the shot. And then you go down a very dark path, because then it starts weakening your actual control, and you don't want that.
I've always said I get more annoyed by a bad shot that gives me a good score than a good shot that doesn't go where I want it, because, like you said, it just reinforces bad habits, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's like today, with the lad that I was coaching, Rob. He came up, and it's only one of his first few arrows, and he's very conscious of aiming, but he's not got a full extension, so the arrow drops short.
Yeah,
But it landed in a perfect line. And I said, that's a brilliant shot. And he goes, well, it didn't hit. I says, yeah, but look, it hasn't gone left, it hasn't gone right. You're really focused on control. Yeah. And I think this goes back to what I said earlier. There's a lot of emphasis on improving, but not recognizing how far you've come.
yeah,
And that's always a bit of a concern with me. When you speak to other coaches or you read various other things, there's that aspect of, yes, well, we want to iron out your release, we want to improve your, but what about the stuff that the person is doing well?
yeah,
Like, have they got a good stance? Have they got good posture? Are they moving their head, or are they actually turning and locking on really, really well? Do they have good shoulder position? Is their breathing? All these little things. And it's too easy to sort of turn around and say, right, you need to do this, or you need to do that. And I'm trying to remember who it was. I was listening to a podcast, and it was a great comment on there. What you want in archery is a consistency.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to be able to repeat the task again and again and again. Good form can help, but some of the best archers I know have got some of the worst form in creation. There's a really good bear bow guy that I know that's got.
Ian was saying the same when I talked to him last week, that consistency is far more important than form.
It's good to have a solid form that you can rely on.
Yeah.
That isn't going to hurt you, and by that cause physical injury.
Yeah.
So if you've got, if you're drawing up and your elbow's kind of like all deformed, and it's going to end up causing you discomfort. But there's guys out there that I've seen, and I look at them and think, well, they've got a really energetic release, but I watch them and they do it every single time. So that is part of their shot sequence. That is part of their process. And because of that, everything else kind of works for them.
Yeah.
Rather than it normally being against them when you're doing that. And I think that's it. I think there's an element of consistency, and it's being able to identify what that consistency is, and identify what your good form is and what your good control is. I think, is it Maddie put a comment up on one of the Facebook groups about, or can you rate your control of your shot between 1 and 10 and stuff like that? And then Joel picked up on it as well, didn't he?
We put that up because I'd got the recording coming up with Joel,
right,
and I didn't want to put it up in case anybody picked anything up. So Maddie said, right, I'll put it up. And it's amazing how many people hadn't got a clue what shot control was. The ones that knew what shot control was stood out like a sore thumb.
Yeah.
And I'd had a conversation with him, and I said, right, I'm going to guess that person, and that person have either read Joel's book, done his course, or watched what he's done, and they stood out so clearly.
I think that's what annoyed me at the NFAS Indoor Champs.
Yeah.
On the Saturday, I had really, really good control. On the Sunday, for a number of reasons, tired, it wasn't gelling with me, and I was worried about my son because he was getting really down.
Yeah.
That didn't come in, and I think that was even more annoying because I knew on the Saturday I'd managed to nail it, but on the Sunday it wasn't coming together. And in fairness, I think I had about 4.5 hours sleep anyway. But having that in my mind, that was annoying me. But there wasn't an arrow that I shot that wasn't controlled. I may have not gone where I wanted it to go, and I had to come down a few times, but I wasn't going to let an arrow out that wasn't going to be controlled, because that, for me, is far more important now. That feeling of, yes, okay, and if that control shot, like you said, drops short, or goes high, normally they drop short, then okay, that's life. That's me misjudging it. One up for the course layer, whatever. But I don't want to go down that stage of fluking an arrow in. This isn't like pool when you can smack the cue ball as hard as you like and hopefully it might hit something.
Yeah.
This is more about you having that control and that confidence building control, because that's where it comes. That's where your confidence comes from.
Well, I mean, you like to ask people when you're coaching them, go through their shot process. How many people have started with a mental thing and how many go straight into a physical? Has anybody said to you when you said, run me through your shot process, the first step is, I am going to release the perfect arrow or I'm not going to release it?
Doesn't happen. Even people who have been competing internationally, they'll immediately go into that physical step. And it's like, I talk about the archer's triangle.
Yeah.
And I wrote about the archer's triangle and the fact that there's a bow, the arrow, and the archer. And if you unpick the archer, there's the mental side, there's the physical side, and there is the shot sequence side. Most of them fixate on the physical aspect.
Yeah.
And whether that be the physical aspect of the archer or whether it be the physical aspect of the kit. How much money is made by archery companies, manufacturers, by saying, "Oh, this is the latest bow. This will help you out of this. This will help you out of that. Oh, this will give you even more stabilizing capabilities and all this." At the end of the day, you can buy a really good bow. You can buy really good arrows. But if you don't have the ability to have a level of control, if you don't have the ability to actually know what you're doing,
Yeah.
Yes, it will help some. But, I came fourth at the indoor champs. I'm shooting a bow that's 12 years old, and the arrows are 12 years old. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I went to that one because I knew I couldn't shoot my Blackbrook because of I'd not been well before. And that Blackbrook is 45, 47 pounds.
Yeah.
About 45 on my fingers. And I did not want to shoot that for 2 days, 2 hours on every target. You're talking 80 hours a day, yeah. And I did not feel that I would be in a control. I'll be able to control that.
Yeah.
Dropping down to the Samick that I've got, which is around £40. I knew I could do that. And it was the Friday before they actually managed to find the arrows that worked for it. And in the entire weekend, I only ever used 2 arrows.
I'd noticed it seems to be a lot more prevalent in the compound circles and in trad circles that you've got to have the new bow every year. I mean, you're right. A couple of 3 weeks ago, Joel's son Bodie rocked up somewhere and somebody talked him into shooting a Genesis bow, the little one they use, the NASP 327X with a Genesis bow.
Yeah, but he is phenomenal. He's got it up here.
That's Joel's system for you, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but he's got it up here.
Yeah.
But he applies it as well. You can say, "Oh, it's Joel's system," but the thing being is, don't take it away from him because he knows the system. He's still got to apply it.
Yeah.
He's still got to have the physical ability to judge the distance. He's still got to have the physical ability to draw the bow and hold it and shoot it.
Yeah.
And I think it's quite interesting that people will spend a lot of money on bows, but not necessarily just go for some basic coaching.
Yeah.
And, Joel's put out some great materials. There's a lot of archers out there and a lot of authors out there in the archery community that have put out training programs and various other things. But the thing is that it's useless. All of it's useless unless you apply it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people will buy the books and they might read it, or they might do the online course, or they might go off and read some of the stuff I've written in Bow International, or they will go and troll the websites and look at YouTube's. But you've got to apply it, and you've got to have the consistency to repeatedly apply it.
Yeah.
You can't, like you said earlier, I wanted to pick up a trad bow and shoot as well as I could with the compound 2 weeks later. No, it takes that time.
Yeah.
It took me 6 months when I got my first Blackbrook flat bow to really know that bow. And that's a good bow. It's a good manufacturer. But I was in some ways beating myself up because I was thinking, oh, my scores will go up really, really well because it's a really good bow. Actually, no. And that's when I started this whole kind of mentality aspect and looking at shot sequence and everything like that. Actually, it's only a part of it. Yes, you can have good equipment. But there's 3 bits of equipment. There's the bow, the arrow, and the archer.
Yeah.
So,
well, if you put that bow on a hooter shooter, it'll put that arrow through the same hole every time.
Yes.
The problem is the organic bit, the soggy bit behind the bow.
We're not a hooter shooter.
No.
Yeah. There are so many things that can have a variable, and what you want to do is you want to try and work out, okay, what's under my control, what's not under my control.
Yeah.
And it's important that for those things that are outside your control, I can't, if we were shooting against each other, I couldn't influence how you were shooting if you're in a group over there.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't be thinking about that when I'm shooting. What I should be thinking about is how am I going to put my arrow into the target where I want it to be.
Yeah.
And that can be a hard lesson for people to, especially if they start down that kind of competition
Yeah.
route, whether it be like a father playing off against the son or the son against the father, or, you know, even down at your local club where, oh, you're going around with Fred and John, and John just got a new bow, but you really want to show him, you know, he's really keen on shooting it well.
Yeah.
Some of that can be really good fun, but it can also cause a little bit of internal anxiety.
Yeah.
And then you start, you know, I don't shoot at an Olympic level or international level, but it can start playing on your mind.
Yeah.
If you start thinking about, okay, well, how's he doing? It's like at the end of the day, he's doing what he's doing. All you can control is what is going on with you.
Yeah.
And that can be a hard lesson. That's a lesson for life. You know, it's not just archery.
Yeah. Off the arrow shelf.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I'm going to leave you to talk about this because
Mm-hmm.
I've drunk a lot of coffee again this afternoon.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it's a diuretic, isn't it?
It is a diuretic, yes.
What made you decide to start off the arrow shelf? And I'm gonna dive out a second.
So this is where I just sit here and go,
That's a Leonard Cohen song, isn't it?
nah, no, it wasn't. It was oh, what's the band? What's the band? I can't remember the band. Oh, it was a rock band in the 90s, 2000s. I'm gonna have to look that up. I'm gonna have to look that
I was
up.
well into dance music and
Yeah,
trance
I
then.
know.
Right,
Yeah,
I'll be
that's
back in just a sec.
okay. Well, whilst he's out of the room, I can tell you what he's really like when he was shooting today.
Bloody awful.
No, you weren't. Don't put yourself down. You did. You were doing really. He was actually doing really well. He was trying out his trad bow. He was trying to do. He came down to me for some coaching, and for those of you that don't know, I'm very fortunate that when we bought our house that we live in now, it actually came with about just over half an acre of land behind it, where there was a small orchard and we planted some trees, and I've got a 40-yard range there. So Richard come down earlier today just to do some work and trying to work out which bear shafts to use for his trad setup. And I think we had 350s, 400s, and some 500s, and we were there swapping out pile weights and trying different things and trying to work on his anchor, because he's really committed to this kind of trad aspect. He's really gone fully into it, and I got to commend him for that. That's a really big step, because going from a compound where you know everything about it and you know how to set it up and you know how to tune it, you know how to tune the arrows, to go to a single string, that's a big leap to actually make, because it's a very, yes, you're flinging an arrow forward, yes, you're using a bow, but they're different sets. They're similar skill sets, but there's a stability there. So I'm just singing your praises. Now he's come back into the room. I'll start being less complimentary about him. So the question was, why did I start off the arrow shelf?
Yes.
I was curious about blogging in the real world, away from archery. I teach technology, as you know. I teach educational technology principles, and in one of the things that was coming out with the idea of vlogging and blogging and sort of like documenting your progress and that kind of portfolio aspect.
Yeah.
And I thought, I just got into archery and I wanted something to think about and write about. So I thought, well, let's start putting out my own experiences, what I was doing. And I thought, well, let's put it out there. I'll use a WordPress site. And I've had that WordPress site now for what, 10, 12 years, over 10 years, because I had an award from WordPress saying congratulations. So that's
I discovered the site 10 years ago, because I mean, it was your site that led me to Paget.
Yeah, it was. Oh, yeah, go.
Yeah, because
so
I'd literally Googled 3D Archery West Midlands.
Yeah.
And up came a shoot report for Paget.
That's right, because that's what I used to do a lot of, because I used to go to an awful lot of shoots. I usually did 2 or 3 a month.
Yeah.
what I do is I try to take a load of photographs and then do a write up on how it went and what I thought about it and how balanced it was and all those sort of things, just from a beginner's point of view. And then it was things like, okay, what am I going to be doing with my arrows? How am I going to make my arrows? Or, I've done everything like, what's a good thermos flask to carry, and
Yep.
I've done a recipe of what I think I don't know if you've tried I've got a recipe for like a spiced pumpkin and chili soup. That's great for a winter
That
warm.
sounds nice.
It is actually, and it's actually a Weight Watchers recipe that Sharon told me, and then I tweaked it a bit. So it's like ginger and chili and any roasted pumpkins and everything like that, and blend it down
Yeah.
to whatever thickness. But it was like I could start putting this out, and I remember Lewis, who is the events organizer, the events diary organizer for NFAS,
Yeah.
came up to me about 4 or 5 years ago, and he said, "Oh, well, I was on Google, and I thought I'll just type in NFAS to see what came up."
Yeah.
And I said, "Oh, right, okay." And he said, "Well, I was really surprised about the website. The NFAS website didn't come up, but your WordPress site came up." And I said, "Really?" And he went, "Yeah, all your shoot reports and write-ups and stuff like that." And I went, well, "Yes, but basically, I wanted to do it." And the strap line of the actual site is it's a UK archer's experience of doing field archery.
Yeah.
And there's shoot reports, and I've had some really interesting responses, let's say, from some of the shoot reports from some of the shoot organizers. When I've said I think things are a bit off, and I've had others turn around and say, "Yeah, thanks, it was a great write-up."
Yeah.
But also like equipment, and then I started, when I got the coaching qualification, I started going really deep into the sort of like the target panic and the coaching aspect.
Yeah.
I started writing a lot about that, and that started getting some people interested. And then about the same time as you started yours, I think I started the podcasting idea. Unlike you, though, I don't get the same kind of number of guests or anything like that. I tend to just sit and waffle and talk about coaching or techniques.
I do. I
things like
can't
that.
figure out how I get guessed. I just sit there and talk bullshit. I've got zero credibility, no expertise.
Oh, I disagree with that, because I think you're actually very genuine. I think it's really interesting to when you listen to yours, because you do get the opportunity, or you give them the opportunity to talk.
Yeah.
And that seems to work really, really well. And you do get them on there, and you get the chances. I was sitting down listening to the Push, because the Push is now just gone. I think it's a huge, huge thing for them. They've gone from producing one a week. They're going to try and do two a week.
Yeah.
That's a huge, huge.
I mean, you think
yeah,
he works full time. He's got
Yeah.
5 kids and doing 2 podcasts and all the videos. It's
it's
phenomenal.
it is, and it's really, some of their stuff they put out is great. And I think what's nice about having guests is you get their perspective.
Yeah.
It's very hard for me, and I'm revisiting some of my earlier stuff, and I'm probably going to do a bit more about like the target panic and some coaching tips. But I'm also starting doing some on shoot reports as well.
Yeah.
But because I don't get out to that many shoots now, I've decided, all right, I'll put a podcast out when I've got something to talk about. So I've got some notes about the last one I put out was kind of in March now. So it was like end of January, beginning of February. Just reminding people that actually, the New Year's resolution.
Yeah.
I put a New Year's resolution about being nice to people. Because of one of the things that we can talk about later is like kind of trad versus compound, or trad versus bare bow, or whatever.
Yeah. And everybody hates the crossbows.
That's not fair to think.
Paraphrasing an Weird Al Yankovic
Yankovic
song.
Where was I going with this? Is that it's not too late. If you've kind of fallen off the wagon, if you had this New Year resolution of trying to shoot more, and then by the end of January you've sort of like thought, oh yeah, beginning of January I started really well, but then I dropped off. A bit like the kind of beginning of January, yes, I'll hit the gym.
Yeah.
And I'll do the gym. And then by end of January, beginning of February, started to drop off. That doesn't mean you failed. The only thing the way you're going to fail is if you don't go back to it.
Yeah.
So, so I'm trying to put something out when I've got something to say or there's some news out there. I'm really keen to find out how the voting's gone for the NFAS proposals.
Yes.
And I'm probably going to do one around that, and because there's been some quite big proposals there about potentially new rounds or modified rounds, and also there's the binoculars thing and this and that, and it's like I'm probably going to do something along there. I've got a couple of shoots coming up, so I'll probably do a shoot report on them when I decide what bow I'm going to shoot and what style I'm going to shoot. And I might revisit some of the coaching stuff about, like you were talking about shot sequence. It'd be nice to get some guests on, so it's not just me talking. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. I made a decision a long time ago that I'm going to try and do this when I've got something I feel that's worth saying.
Yeah. I said exactly the same, which I think we both went several months without putting anything out, didn't we?
Yeah, I'd got some really critical reviews or on one of the podcasts. And I thought, well, do I really want to do that? And it's a weird thing, that social media and putting yourself out there doing this sort of thing. Because sometimes it can be really great, but other times you get I won't say the haters, but the people that disagree, and they won't disagree with your ideas. They'll attack you.
Yes.
And it's like, well, that's, in my view, if you disagree with somebody's ideas, okay, but you're disagreeing with their ideas. It's like there's what's the phrase? You can have a difference of opinion, but an opinion can never be wrong.
Yeah.
Because it's somebody's opinion. It can be different to yours. And I think that's the important view. So it's like some people might go to a shoot and think, yeah, it's great. But then, as you know, I've got a young son. I've been to shoots where they've put the junior pegs in and he can't physically see the target.
Yeah.
Because there's like a 3-foot high fence in the way. And they say, oh, just move him forward so it's easy. And it's like, well, actually, no, because there's safety ramifications, because if that shot's been set along that line and you move him forward, there's no guarantee he's going to be in the same line.
Yeah.
Aspect like that. But it's not fair on any other kid that's in the same class. So, and I've voiced that before, and I've voiced it when there's been what I think is unnecessary shots or maybe unnecessary distances.
Yeah.
Because for me, if I'm shooting at a competition, it's not whether or not my arrow will get to the target. It should be about, okay, I want to make sure that my arrow is a scoring arrow in the target.
Yeah.
It's not about whether the arrow will get there. It's about you having a level of accuracy at that distance. And that's why I prefer setting, I won't say shorter shots, but there'll be very, very rarely will I set a shot that's over 50 meters, over 50 yards. I'll set them for some of the compounds and for the crossbow and stuff like that, the wasp peg. But generally, a lot of mine will be upper 45 element, but there'll be something in it that will be, whether it be the peg position, so you could get your foot alignment, or whether it'll be an avenue shot, or whether or not I manage to use some dead ground to hide some distance. I'd rather do that, because that's what I see is like, well, what the original emphasis of NFAS was, that it's kind of pseudo hunting.
Yeah.
So it's testing your skills of accuracy and reading the ground, as opposed to your ability for your arrow to transit all the way to the target. And that's a bit controversial in some areas.
Mm. I must admit, I'm not the greatest judge of distance. Never been one of my fortes, which is weird considering I was shooting unlimited. but I did like more technical shots,
I think
the technically challenging shots. I mean, when the Bodnik Bowhunter Challenge came over here, I thought, bloody hell, I wish somebody would do uh, a compound version of that, or one where compounds can shoot. And I think, is it Bricks and Marchers?
somebody's talking about doing it.
Bricks and Marchers are doing one.
I think what's interesting, and there's two things to try and unpick where that's concerned. One of them is that you can overload on technical shots. So what you want, if you've got a 36 target course, you want to have maybe 7 or 8 targets that are a technical shot. Because if you make every single one of them a technical shot,
Yeah.
it just does the head in. And what was the other thing? Because I was talking about the technical shots. I lost the train of thought. Oh yeah, that's it. Not everybody has the ability to shoot a technical shot.
Yeah.
And that's no disrespect to the archer, but they may not have been coached to do it. I remember I set one shot at our old wood, and I had a parent come up and say, that shot was dangerous. I went, okay, why was that shot dangerous? And they said, oh, well, when the archer's on the peg, their bow's is in the horizontal branch. And it was interesting because the person in question was a coach. And I said, okay, so let's go and have a look. And forgive me if you're listening to this because you're not going to be able to visualize this. You know, the peg's there.
Yeah.
And the archer put their foot on the peg and they went like that. I went, okay. You know, you've got legs and you can put your foot on the peg and then just take a step back. And it's like, oh no, I teach them to have their foots next to each other and stand like that. They've got to be like that. Well, the whole thing about field archery as opposed to target is the adaptability of it.
And if you were hunting, you can't say to the animal, can you come this way, please, just so I can keep my feet together.
So there is an element of you learning how to shoot in different stances, different stands and we were doing this with you, weren't we, about how you naturally dropped one stance and open and closed stance and stuff like that, but also about the concept of there are times that you may need to put your feet together because there's a small area, or you may need to spread your legs, or you take a kind of step back. Excuse me. That makes a shot technical.
Yeah.
But a lot of the archers that are coming through now don't teach it. They aren't taught it. So it's like one session I do with people is I get a breeze block and I put the peg there and I put the breeze block next to the peg and say, right, your front foot is going to be higher than your back foot. How are you going to adapt to that? And I do that at like 5 yards and I do that at 30 yards.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is at 5 yards, I'll put the target face at the bottom of the boss. So suddenly they've got 1 foot up, 1 foot down, and they're having to
on a target that's
So they have to think about, okay, what's the lower limb going to be doing? Is that lower limb going to clear the leg? Yeah.
So you know how small and flat our woods is at Paget. That's really the only way we can make shots difficult. If there's a little bit of a slope or a hump, try and use that to make footing awkward.
Yeah, and but you can do it so that there's mistakes I've seen done. I've seen it where you've literally had pegs directly behind a tree for the archers to step around the tree. That's fine. But they had the red, the white, and the blue there, and the blue and the white are both junior pegs.
Yeah.
It also means that not all archers are, I'm 5'8", have got the leg spread to go across. Sharon's shorter, and she really struggled. So there's an element of getting that balance. And I think the Bodniks do it really well. But the problem is, because there was a whole kind of push to that for this to become more common in the NFAS, that kind of style. There's the whole thing about, are people taught how to adapt? Are the people, you're in a woodland, you hold your bow up and there's a branch up there. You can turn around and complain to the marshal and say, oh, this isn't a safe shot because there's that there. Or you can go, okay, they've got that there. Have they put that deliberately So how am I going to adapt to it? You know, if
Yeah.
you've ever shot Lime Valley is like that. It's literally a valley, and there are shots that are 45-degree down, and there's shots that are 45-degree up. You have to adapt your foot position.
Yeah.
You have to be aware of what that factor has. So if you are aiming down, okay, what are you going to do when you're thinking about it? And it's really easy to do because you shoot at 5 yards and you put a target at the bottom of a boss. You soon find out what happens with your lower limb and smacking into your leg. And this is what I mean about like coaching for improvement. There's my old driving instructor has said to me, it's like, okay, once you pass your driving test, then you learn to drive.
Old school instructors used to tell you that, hadn't they?
Yeah, and this is the truth because you know I was very lucky. I learnt up in North Wales. I learnt to do hill starts on the Great Orme. Right,
Landed? No.
landed no.
Yeah. I'm an
Planned.
Englishman. If I try that, I'd just spray saliva down the length of the room.
But for those of you who don't know, it's quite a steep part of North Wales coastline, and you know it meant that you had that ability. But because you're shown it, because you're shown the techniques to could think about it
Yeah.
and process it, you can then adapt. And I'm not sure whether that is universally taught or even is out there,
Yeah.
because if you what is a could be a easy shot for me because I'm used to adapting, could be a really challenging or impossible shot for somebody else. You know, I shot Centura a couple of years ago, and they had a single ped for 3 targets. You take 1 arrow at each target.
Yeah.
And it was a really nice photo out. They had a bedded doe. Sorry, they had a bedded fawn, they had a doe, and then they had a stag.
Yeah.
The idea was you took 1 at each, and it was set up as a fan shot. And I stood and watched the members of my group, and what they did is they went up to the peg, put their foot against the peg, drew up, shot that one that was kind of like off to the left,
Yeah.
shot the one off to the right, shot the one up on the hill. And I thought, well, that's interesting. And I watched everybody do it. And then I went up to the peg and I went, okay, well, the bedded one's down there. So foot's on position. Let's move my position so I'm like that. Right? Shot that one. Doe's over there. Okay, let's stand and realign myself to shoot that way.
Yeah.
Not just kind of plant myself and go bang, duh, duh. I actually changed my position.
Yeah.
And I did that at the indoor 3Ds as well, because they had a couple of times when you had 2 targets side by side. And you'd shoot one arrow into one and one into the other. Well, actually, if you're going to be shooting that way, you want to have an alignment like that.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean, okay, yes, I know I can do it. If I'm going to do it properly, I'm going to actually move my feet because
Yeah.
there's a possibility.
Position yourself for the shot.
That's right. But people don't think that. They don't. And unless you make them aware of it, unless you make them think, question, okay, what happens when that takes place? How many times have you seen people miss with their first arrow, be annoyed, shoot the second arrow annoyed, and then suddenly the pressure's on them so that the third arrow has got a score?
Yeah.
You see it time and time again. So that's what, it goes back to that kind of aspect of being controlled and just being nice and steady and thinking about each shot is a new shot.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's necessarily taught now.
I know
in all clubs anyway.
when I'd been down to Briar Rose and I'd said to you, oh, that'd be a nice shot. And you said, but if I laid that at the open shoot, we would get complaints because it's not just like a straight, really easy shot. If you've got to modify your stance or scoosh down a bit. And that's what appealed to me about NFAS, though, that it wasn't just, we've got EFA for clear lane shots.
There should be at any tournament. Okay, I'll tell you this for a fact now. For the Briar Rose, there's 4 easy shots.
Yeah.
That's the first shot. Your target number 1, target number 18, target number 19, and target number 36. And we've deliberately done that because the last thing you want, if you're doing a round and going round, the last thing you want before a break is to have a hard shot.
Yeah.
And the last thing you want after a break is a hard shot. Because you don't know how long you're going to have been waiting for. You want to have that kind of feel good factor. And
Yeah.
at the end of the day, yes, there is a competition between the archers and the course layers. There's always that, I don't like the
Yeah.
archers versus course layers. It's not. It's basically a competition between the two.
Yeah.
We're there to give you a challenge, but not to see you going away crying. And that's the thing that upsets me most, I think, with some of the junior pegs I see these days. That some of the junior or considerations for the juniors results in the juniors being sometimes a bit deflated.
Yeah.
And if you get juniors deflated, then the parents get deflated because they're going to have to cope with them in the car on the way home. And I just feel that you've got to strike a balance. You've got to have a balance of them enjoying it, but it's not. I'm not wanting to set a course. It's like the 18 targets, the new 18 targets are out. Yeah, Steve has done a fantastic job. Steve Parsons, he set some really good shots. And we've tweaked a few here and we've tweaked a few there. But the vast majority of them have been Steve's. Yeah. But the point being is, they've been set and he's come up with the idea and then we've worked at making them doable.
Yeah.
We could make them so much harder. We could make the windows that anybody shooting through or make them into windows. But do we want to make it so hard that people come off with their worst ever score? No. Do we want to make it so easy so they all come off with their personal bests? No. What we want to do is we want to have a balance of there's going to be a few long shots, a few short shots, there's going to be some give-me's, but the rest of them will be fun and they'll be able to go around and have an entertaining shoot.
Yeah.
And that's what the same as I've done for any course that I've set, any club. Now, I've only set one championships course, and that was the goal that we set when we set that course. And 3 weeks before, that was set as a wooden arrows course, and then 3 weeks beforehand, we were told actually he's going to have compounds on it.
Ooh.
And they said, "Oh, do you want to change your pegging positions and stuff like that?" And we went, "No, we're not." We kept them exactly the same place. And we had compounders coming off it and going, "That's just completely threw me." And some of the best compounders, some of the really good crossbows came off and said, "You completely tricked me," because we had on one of the targets, we had the standing bear, and the brown standing bear that comes in like 3 sizes. There's like a 5 foot, a 6 foot, and a 7 foot one, but all the upper bits exactly the same.
Yeah.
Well, we'd put one out, and you could only see from the chest up, so you couldn't work out how tall it was. And loads of people kind of completely missed that and ended up in the neck or the nose because they thought it was the bigger one. But this is what I mean. We did a great trick with, you remember the old leaning bear, the Mackenzie leaning bear?
Yeah.
We had one of them, and it's always seen leaning up against a tree.
Yeah.
And I said, I don't want to do that. It's been done way too many times. And there was a metal rebar that was in the foot that we couldn't get out that way.
Yeah.
I said, I've got an idea. And I said to the other course layers, there's Andy, myself, Sharon, and Steve, let's put it on the ground. And they sort of looked at me and said, well, and what we did was I put it on the ground and it was on a slope. There was a tree kind of here.
Yeah.
And there was a slope coming down to it. And I said, right, I want it to look like the bear's coming down to root around the bottom of the tree stump.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I went, all right. And we put it in. And if you looked at it and you just glanced at it, it looked like the old, it wasn't Mackenzie. There used to be like an old brown boar. I don't know if you ever remember seeing it, but with, and if you just glanced at it, it looked like it was a boar. And the butt was actually the boar's head facing up that way. and but the head was actually down low, and loads of people kind of went up to it. Oh, they went, oh yeah, I think I know what that is. Boom. And they went up to it and went, it's
Shot
the
it in the
leaning,
derriere.
yeah, it's the leaning bear. You put it on the ground facing down, and we went, yeah, and they went, I didn't clock that at all.
I think it was the ASA in the States. I watched one of their videos on YouTube, one of Competition Archery Media's, and they'd actually taken the legs off a standing deer
I've
and
seen
put
that
it
done before. Yeah,
belly on the floor, and that created absolute havoc for people.
I had that at Duvel. Did that really well. I think it was their last shoot. And it's really clever. What they'd done is they'd got a legged deer, or like a roe deer, but they'd put it into a gully
Ooh,
so it looked like a bedded deer.
yeah,
And I skimmed 2 hours underneath it because 'cause it was a lovely, because it was basically you were slightly lower down, you're looking up at it, um, and they just set it superbly. And it wasn't until you got up, because I couldn't work out why I was going, when I went low,
yeah,
I wasn't hearing a thud. And it basically I'd gone just under the belly on two of them, which was where you would normally had there would have been the legs folded underneath.
yeah,
But it wasn't. And I thought, yeah, actually that's nice. That's clever course laying.
yeah.
And it's my mistake for misjudging it.
But see, you guys are Briar Rose. You're the expert at hiding yardage. I mean, I shot there with Nathan last year
Mm.
at your Open, and I called you like everything under the sun. There was doing no stupid long targets. Everything was really achievable.
I think the longest wasp peg of that day was 62 yards,
Yeah,
maybe
I
63
think
yards.
that the standing bear.
The standing bear. Oh,
That,
and there
that
was also the bison as well, but I think the bison was around about the same, around about 62, 63.
my first target was a standing bear, and I pinwheeled the 24. I was over the moon with that. But there was everything was appropriate sizes for the distance. It's just you guys use the undergrowth so well
Thank you.
to hide the distance, and you make distance judging really difficult. You can make
I was surprised that the scores weren't higher, but again, I think I know the ground, so I don't
yeah
realize necessarily how hard it is.
yeah
But yeah, we had some good feedback. We actually, I think that was the largest shoot that we've hosted. We had just under 100 people. There were 103, I think, booked in.
it was a really good day. That wasn't I was shooting with Nathan and Will,
Yeah,
and I said it wasn't like being at a competition. It was just like being with a couple of mates having a wander around the woods, flinging some sticks at some target. It was a awesome day.
We were very lucky. It flowed really well. We had one hiccup near the end, and that was partly there was, I think there'd been an issue with a crossbow, string coming off the crossbow, and then I slowed down one group because one of the ladies, they'd caught, you know how we've got the metal peg numbers,
Yeah,
and she'd caught that on her leg, and I was putting a dressing on that, but it flowed really well.
it did.
The biggest problem that we have, and the reason that I think a lot of clubs in NFAS struggle in some ways, is that we can't put on a full 36 target 3D course.
Yeah,
And people want to shoot 3Ds. They don't like shooting papers. And, you know, I think that's right, we had 24 3D or 2D targets out that year.
yeah,
So 2/3 of the course. But if you've got in your calendar, you've got an option to shoot something that's a 3D course or a mixed course, more people will go for that 3D course.
yeah,
And that is really tough on a club, because 3Ds are not cheap
no,
unless you go for the small ones, and then they're not really that cost effective. And then you have the aspect of some people push them really far back, and then it's
yeah.
so it's quite tough. I don't see it getting any easier, really. I think organizations like NFAS should get involved with this. I think they should sort of like turn around and offer some kind of way of supporting clubs to buy 3Ds. You know,
Yeah.
whether they get like a pre-order and then get a container load from Wild Creek or from JVD or whatever, because they're not getting any cheaper, and the expectation now is for 3D courses.
Yeah.
And I think part of that has come because if you notice, we used all NFAS faces.
Yeah.
Or NFAS like faces because we
Yeah.
actually know the guy who prints them. Steve's got contact with him. A lot of the old faces were not very friendly. The new NFAS faces, because the wound lines go down the legs,
Yeah.
you're effectively, it's kind of like shooting a 3D in that respect.
Got unfriendly, the JVD wolf. That was the
Chihuahua wolf.
unfriendliest.
The Chihuahua, yeah, we used to call it the Chihuahua wolf.
Yeah.
It was basically a Chihuahua in a huge fur coat. But yes, that's the point. And you'd have them, and quite often you'd have them, because they're a large face, you'd have them set out at the size of the face as opposed to the size of the kill. And that really discouraged people. And the difference with shooting a 3D in a paper is you can hear when you hit a 3D.
Yeah.
The sound of you hitting a paper and scoring is the same as you hitting a paper and failing.
Missing. Yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons I've always said, let people have binoculars. So it's simply because if they have shot a paper face and they're not sure, they can scope it and go, yeah, I'm in, or I'm still not sure, I'm going to take another one.
Yeah.
And I think that's why, shooting paper in some ways I think is harder than shooting 3Ds. With 3Ds, you tend to find people will angle them at a strange angle to make the shot harder, make the 2024 smaller. Shooting paper, it's a flat face.
Yeah.
You've really got to get your eye in on that distance. And, you're talking about your distance judgment abilities. I don't judge distance. I'm completely instinctive.
Yeah.
Yeah. I carry a rangefinder with me when I'm coaching. And people say, well, why do you use a rangefinder when you're coaching? Because I want to find out from the archer what they think that distance is.
Yeah.
And then be able to tell them, well, actually, this is the distance. Why do you think there's a difference? And you saying about dead ground and that kind of thing. It's so that they can start learning. It's a learning process for them. And that's helped a lot of people, because then they'll go, oh, okay, well, why is that? Oh, hang on, wait a minute. Yeah, that is, there is behind that crest. Yes, that could hide not 3 yards, but that could hide 6 yards.
Yeah.
So what I'm going back to and I'm saying is that with a paper face, the face is on the boss and you've got an idea of judging it. But you've got to be really clued in as to where it is. And that's why, again, I think binoculars should be allowed so you can actually know where the scoring zones are. Because not all of them are in logical places, or as logical as you used to say. But I think people will put off paper faces because they tend to get pushed further and further back, or they'd have a small face and a silly distance.
Yeah, I mean, we got I can't remember, it's an elk or a stag, paper face at Paget. When you look, the paper it's printed on is huge.
But the actual animal's tiny.
And the kill, if that was on an EFA course, that'd be a 20-yard shot at most. But you'll see it, because it's a deer, it'll be pushed out at 40 yards. And you think, well, hang on a minute.
There's the rhododendron deer. That's another JVD. Do you remember the rhododendron deer?
Yes, we used to have that. God, last time I remember shooting that at Paget was when we were going round, coming away from the clubhouse, parallel to the road, and it was target 2 or 3 along there.
Horrible place, because again, we're talking about the Chihuahua wolf, where he's got a huge, great big fur coat, and none of the fur would score unless you're a good 2 inches in. And that rhododendron deer is terrible for that as well, because there's a lot of it. The back pretty much follows the line of the animal, but the belly and the rump and the neck, you've got a good inch and a half at times all the way around it. The only way you can guarantee of hitting it is to put an arrow right in the middle of it.
Yeah.
But there used to be, there was a face on Delta Stag that was I used to love because that was a really nice target because pretty much if you were in the animal, you scored. And
The
I like
elk. It was
that.
an elk.
Was it an elk?
Yeah, we had that on a Paget. I used to love that because the where the 24 was actually right over the heart, and I just used to stand and pound that target
I
because I
just,
loved it.
you know, and I think this is what I'm saying is that paper faces are a different skill set.
Yeah,
It's people say 3Ds look nicer. Yes, they look nicer. Um, but a lot of clubs don't have the money to do it.
yeah,
If you're doing like 3Ds tournaments, they don't have backstops. So they can be really hard on your arrows. And I
yeah,
remember shooting one 3Ds. In fact, it might be my first ever 3Ds. And you'll know that in my quiver, I've got 3 arrows. And
yeah,
then all my other arrows are in a tube on my back. And I remember shooting with a guy, and it was a mixed class, and he was shooting barebow. And he'd gone out there with 9 arrows.
yeah.
And by the end of the day, he had 2 left.
Wow.
Simply because they'd set the course, and it was a tough course. But he'd had a couple break, and then a couple just glance off. And there's no backstops, there's nothing there. So you're just
Yeah,
burying into fern or burying into rhododendron. I've helped clubs break down their courses afterwards. And I remember, I think it was Yorick I was doing, helping one time. And I'd taken my metal detector and they'd said, oh, we think there's some arrows over here. And they'd had a 3D, a 3D reindeer, the really big 3D reindeer that's
yes,
out there. They'd had that out. There's a lovely earth bank behind. And I put the metal detector over it. I pulled 5 crossbow bolts out and 3 arrows
wow.
out of that earth bank. And 3 of those crossbow bolts were shot from the same person, which must have been so disheartening for them.
Yeah,
But 9 times out of 10, it's really hard at a tournament like that to find your arrows. So it becomes quite demoralizing. And this is why I say it should be more about the ability of the accuracy rather than being able to get that distance.
yeah,
Now, there's been a few debates I've been listening to on Push and others about marked and unmarked distances. To me, it makes no difference at all because I don't gap.
no,
I can see the appeal of marked distances because then it becomes an accuracy aspect.
that it is a pure archery competition rather than a distance judging competition. Only if you look in the States, the marked classes are the classes that are growing the fastest, and they're getting huge numbers growth in them.
And I think that's because people will learn their gaps and learn their point on distances and stuff like that. But if we are wanting to, and the thing with NFAS, for example, is there's a comment about, unmarked distance and it's pseudo hunting. Well, you don't necessarily have the time to put rangefinder onto the target if you're hunting. I object to that phrase. I object to the concept that NFAS is like pseudo hunting because we're not.
No, that disappeared a long time. I mean, that's where it was initially founded, wasn't it?
That's right. And then if you wanted to have those kind of pseudo hunting distances, you wouldn't have anything over 40 yards. And you've got ladies that are out there. It's like Wendy. I think she shoots 24.
20. She's down to a 16-pound bow now.
Is she?
Yeah.
Right. So a 16-pound bow, and she's only got a draw of like 23 inches.
She's a member of Paget. We used her to test shoot our course to make sure if anybody said, oh, I can't get clearance under that branch, it was, yes, you can, because we've had a lady come round with a 16-pound longbow that puts them in like a mortar.
Yeah. And that's the thing is that when you're setting a course, you've got to think about all these abilities.
Yeah.
It's not just the ability of the archer to judge the distance, but what's their equipment doing?
Yeah.
We were looking at today, trying out your different spines, the 350s, the 400, and the 500.
Yeah.
They'll perform very differently. And they'll perform really differently. In fact, those was it the 350s with the 80s up front that I shot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was shooting my 40-pound recurve.
The ones that amaze me were you putting a 400 spine FMJ out of a recurve with only 80 grains up front, which in theory should be horrendously overspined, but they flew like it was like watching laser beams coming out of the front of that bow.
Yeah, I was really surprised at that. I want to weigh those because I might use them on my TDR. Because the problem I have with, I think this was a debate that you had with the couple that makes the bows over in the States
Austin and Courtney Motts and Joe
Thank you.
River bows.
about bow weights because you were talking about Joy. I've got a lot of black brooks, and Andy, who used to make the black
Yeah.
brooks, yeah, would put a minimum grain per inch or grain per pound calculation on
Yeah.
on it, and it was the idea that it was like with my flat bows, 9 grains was the minimum, and I know there's a lot of manufacturers that don't do that. Do you know what the history behind why that came about?
Not in this country. I only know ASA wise that they, and this is only for compound as far as I know, they had to shoot a minimum of 5 grains per pound. I know those was per pound. Yeah, 5 grains per pound rather than grains per inch. If you couldn't achieve if you couldn't achieve a certain speed, you could drop below 5 grains per pound. But I'm presuming with trad bows, there's a risk of it being effectively like a dry fire.
Micro dry fires.
Yeah.
And there was a craze several years ago of trying to get really light arrows. I remember talking to some guys down at Merlin about this, and it was at a shoot. That was it. There was a couple of guys that I knew from the Merlin archery. They used to go down to Merlin archery on a Tuesday night, like I used to, and they were saying, "Oh yes, well such and such is shooting a 360 grain arrow, and such is shooting a 340." And I went, "Oh right, okay. What are you shooting, Rob?" I said, "I'm shooting a 430, 440." And they go, "What? Why are you doing that?" It's like, well, A, I find it's more stable. B, it's more durable, the arrow wise. C, it's better for the bow because it doesn't make it anywhere near as noisy as some of the other bows. I don't end up needing to put multiple string silencers on to quieten it down. And I'm not micro dry firing. And I haven't got the danger that, shooting, really on the edge of safe,
Yeah.
in my view, means that I'm not going to be damaged in the bow over long term. And I think what's forgotten is that if you kind of speak and look at any of the Olympic archers, they'll have multiple sets of bows, they'll have multiple sets of limbs, and they will blow through limbs through the year.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't have that kind of money. So I don't want to be damaging my bow. So my recurves or my flat bows, I think I can go down to 4010, 405 on mine.
Yeah.
Most of my flat bow arrows are between 430 and 440. And for the recurve,
That's heavier than the arrows I was shooting out of my prime.
yeah. But the point being is there are a 29.5 inch long because my draw is just under 28 inches. And I'm a skin flint, so if I break the tip off, I know I can still use them.
Yep.
They've got a 4-inch fletching on the end. They're a 1132-inch shaft. And they work for me. They're a parallel. We were talking about tapering and how I played around with like rear tapers. And I actually found the rear tapers that work better than the front tapers.
Yeah.
But they work for me, and I can produce those arrows in a uniform number or a sufficient batch that I have a number of them.
Yeah.
I can shoot them. And I know the bow's nice and quiet. It's efficient because there's enough weight in the arrow to absorb the energy. And what was happening these several years ago, going back to the original topic, where people were chasing these really, really light wooden arrows. And then they were finding that it wasn't doing an awful lot of good for their bow. Their bows were being really noisy. And you had the situation that you could start, having cracks
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So some of the manufacturers, and like Andy, and started putting this like minimum weight style so that it didn't invalidate the warranty.
Yeah.
And I can understand it. Andy was a tiny place. You were recording in your living room. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you double the size of this, that's the size of his entire shop.
Wow.
Yeah. It's like this would be his milling and cutting and sanding section.
Yeah.
And then you'd have another section just outside. He had a tiny, tiny little shop. He couldn't produce many arrows. Many bows. He'd probably do 6 in 6 to 8 weeks. Yeah, as a batch. But you'd go in there and he wouldn't have stock bows, a bit like the guys that you were talking about in the States. Yeah, they wouldn't have an awful lot of stock bows. A lot of the time they were custom bows. They were custom builds. But you'd be able to go in there and go, right, I want to have that wood. I want to have that wood. I want to have that wood.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he would tailor it. And I remember him making one of Sharon's bows. And he messaged Sharon. He said, I'm really sorry. Oh, she said, what's wrong? He says, it's come up at £37, not 38. And I know you wanted 38. And she went, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
She won the championships with that bow. It was the prototype on the new flat bows that he was doing. Because, but that, going back to what I was saying, that 9 grain per pound, yeah, that's where that kind of came from. Is the fact that people were going for, and they were shooting trad bows that weren't designed to take ultralight arrows. It's like you have my Olympic. We got was it Cap Windstorm limbs on mine. Yeah, I can shoot a light arrow out of that without too much of a problem.
Yeah,
I couldn't do that with my wooden riser, and my Blackbrook.
Yeah.
I'd actually got in touch with Andrew recently, and he said I could probably drop down to 8 grains. Yeah.
Yeah.
For that one, but that's where the danger came from. Is that aspect of actually people doing what I'd call micro dry fires, where the arrow's not really heavy enough to accommodate the energy that's being displaced from, energized from the limbs. And trying to think of the best way of describing it, but you know what I mean. It's like, and that's what it is. It is a spring.
Yeah,
and that's why making sure you've got a good fitting of the knock onto your string. And there's so many times I see people actually, their knocks are so tight on the string. Yeah, I always had I was always taught that if you held your bow after you've put your arrow on it and you held it and you tapped that string, that knock should come off.
See, I haven't tried that with mine yet. I really should, but today was the first time I've had the Microlite Super Knocks on that string. But when I ordered it, I told them what knocks I was using, what knocks I was going to be using.
Yeah, and this is it. It's having too open a knock is dangerous because it could fall off and stuff like that. But you need to have one that actually fits and holds on to that arrow, but doesn't grasp it for eternity.
Yeah,
because then that's going to give you a jerk or a non-clean release from the string. And it's all these little things, and that's the same for a compound as to whether it be a trad bow.
So whenever I've ordered strings from the States for compounds, I always say, what knocks are you using? And I know Trevor Fielder at Triple T Strings in the States, he's actually got a library of all the knocks. So if he builds you a string...
It's a huge difference in trad knocks. You start going down different manufacturers.
Well, he's got them, and he'll test fit them. And if the serving's a little bit fat, he'll take it off and reserve it with one that fits. Or if it's not fat enough, he'll take it off. But the amount of times he's done it, he knows how many strands of what material goes with what diameter serving to fit what knock.
And the problem is that level of service, that level of expertise is superb. but managing to try and keep that going when you compare to what you can just go into the shop and buy
Yeah.
a continual loop, or get the China syndrome of like you can just get cheap stuff. And I think that's the problem. If you were wanting, we were talking about your tab, weren't we, earlier? And I'm going to get in touch with the guy and
Yeah.
get some.
I'm going to give him a shout out. Paul Chittenden, Dirty Gnome Leather. And remember, don't Google Dirty Gnome Leather.
He's a really nice guy because I've been chatting to him on Instagram. And
He is
I'm
awesome.
sorry I haven't got back in touch with you, but I've just come back off holiday.
Jet setting and skiing.
Yes, we're not quite jet setting. In Andorra, it's not really jet setting. It's more, I would say budget, but it's not even budget these days. It's crazy prices trying to go away on a half term.
Oh, yeah,
absolutely
because
crazy.
they've clocked the half terms become like the main season now, and forget it in this country because they don't even kiss you before they fuck you at the hospitality industry in this country.
It's I can understand why parents take kids out early.
Oh yeah,
and take the fine because basically the
you're
amount of
still
savings-
saving hundreds.
Oh yeah, it's we did it because it was gonna we weren't sure whether we'd enjoy a ski holiday.
Yeah,
Sharon and I have been skiing for years. We started in our 30s because Sharon decided when she was I think it was on her 30th birthday, she wanted to go skiing next year. So we went, okay.
wow.
And I started, well, we both started at the same time, and we've been very fortunate in being able to go and do it.
Yeah,
But yeah, we've always been able to take them holidays whenever, and now we've got young families.
Yeah.
That's not a practical thing, but oh man, couldn't believe the venue was fantastic. I'm going to give a shout out to the Sport Hotel in Andorra. Brilliant place. I've got a dairy allergy.
Yeah.
So I'm always a bit dubious. Yeah. This place, the size of your dining room table
Yeah.
would just be the cheese board. That was it. Yeah, the place is absolutely amazing. We went there like 20 odd years ago and we thought it was amazing then. Went back there and it's like you could just we paid for breakfast and evening meals and it was brilliant. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Conditions, not great, but that's mainly just because of the weather and global warming or whatever you want to say or thinking about that. But
Don't get me started on that one.
But it was a fantastic hotel, fantastic food, really good setup for that.
Yeah.
And it's literally just above the gondola. So you walk out, you pick up your skis, and you go straight onto the gondola, and it's fantastic. But I can't fault them for their food. And I was going up, and they'd have two hot plates. They'd have a plate, and then it was brilliant. So yeah, that was really nice. It was a nice break to get away, and I think our little man's now a bit addicted to skiing, a bit like the rest of us. So we have to try and mortgage a kidney or something for the next one. See if I can get him over to Canada. Actually.
I was going to say it's got to be the States, hasn't it?
I'm a huge Canadian fan. I love Canada. How many times have I been out there? 12 times? 10, 12 times?
Wow.
And I love the West Coast. I've never been over to the East Coast, but I've been over to the West Coast loads. I've skied in Whistler, Big White, some peaks, done a driving holiday through the Rockies, hiking and walking on that holiday. First time I've seen a wild bear was on that holiday. And a wild wolf actually, that was amazing. So yeah, it's somewhere that we seriously considered actually emigrating at one stage and even buying a property out there.
Yeah,
and it's beautiful. I absolutely love that West Coast, that the rocky areas, and some peaks we've been to quite a few times, and. So I do other things other than archery.
I was going to say something. It's just totally. I'm putting it down to my age when things just go poof out of my head.
Yeah, it gets worse as you get older, because you're still younger than I am. So yeah, it gets worse.
Well, what the hell was I going to ask you? Oh man, this is. I'm doing well to go this far without losing my train of thought.
Yeah, no, I was thinking that.
Normally in the first few seconds.
Shall we do a good one?
Ba-ching.
I'm going to say, shall we do a good topic like them versus us, trad versus?
Yeah, because now I was talking to Lee about this one, Trad Sniper,
Mm.
and he said he tends to find most of the hate is directed from trad shooters towards compound shooters, not the other way around.
I think there is sometimes
Or
an animosity.
is it a
Yeah, but
vocal
he's
minority?
yeah.
Is it a very? I mean, you look on the NFAS page; it's always the same names that are coming up throwing shade.
Yeah, I think Trad Sniper's great at triggering some of that because he's got the black longbow and the black arrows and stuff like that. But I know a guy that used to deliberately used to paint his wooden arrows black so they look like carbon because he used to Meeson. He's a brilliant shot. So he used to
That's
decide
the
he's
name
going
I
to Paul
know.
Meeson. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's a brilliant shot. He's a really nice guy. His daughter is as well. Okay, and he used to paint his arrows black because he used to do it as a bit of a wind up to the people to think he was shooting carbon. But I do think that, I've said this before. I think it's really sad that there is this animosity.
Yeah, I can't get over it. I've always been a firm believer. Shoot what makes you happy.
But I think
I would have cracked a joke about Keir Starmer then, but I'd get arrested these days, wouldn't I?
it's not generally a good idea to encourage shooting political party or whatever political party. But I think there is that aspect of kind of them versus us, and if you could get rid of that, because we are at the end of the day, we're all shooting the bows.
Yeah.
We're all using bows to shoot arrows.
Yeah.
We're there to hopefully have fun and enjoy themselves. I think some of the animosity comes from the time delays that archers encounter when they're going around to shoot.
Yeah.
So if you've got what's the phrase? Twiddlers, that's the phrase that's
Yeah.
used quite often. If you've got somebody who is changing their sights on each target because the fact they're measuring the distance, and this goes back to when we were talking about mark distance and mark distances. In some ways, if you had marked distances, you wouldn't have that time delay because you go up to the peg and you go, it's a 42-yard shot, click, 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 bang, you're away.
Yeah.
Yeah. But because NFAS which is the one I shoot most, is all unmarked distances.
Yeah.
They're coming up and they're scoping it on with the binoculars, trying to work out the distance, and they're taking time. The thing is, they're not aiming to hit the animal. Those compounders aren't aiming to hit the animal.
No.
They're aiming to hit that 24, which is about the size of a £2 coin, or about,
Yeah.
what did you say, 2 inches across at the maximum.
And the top shooters will have competitions between themselves as for the pro ring.
And that's the point. So they're not shooting just to try and hit the animal. They're shooting for that tiny little area.
Yeah.
And that's why it's more, for them, it's more critical.
Yeah.
I mean, you made a comment about with compound, there's the expectation of you're not just hitting the animal, but you're blowing out the center. For some of the trad people, I won't say all of them, for some of them, they're just wanting to hit the animal. And
Yeah.
there's the old adage of aim small, miss small. There's a great thing from a Steve Perry book, The Man Who Never Missed. He was talking about marksmanship in that. And there was 3 archers at a competition, and they couldn't be split as to which one was the best. So what they did is they put a fish. Don't ask me why. They put a fish onto a target, and the 3 archers each had 1 arrow at the target. And the organizer came up and said, "Right, okay, to the first archer, what did you aim for?" And he said, "I aimed for the fish." Went to the second archer and he said, "What did you aim for?" He said, "I aimed for the middle of the fish." And the third archer was asked, and he said, "I aimed for the fish's eye." Now we probably can guess it's the guy who aimed for the fish's eye was the one, because there's the old principle of aim small, miss small. But for that's a good analogy for
Yeah.
shooting, because some people will just aim for the fish. They'll aim to hit the animal.
Yeah.
As long as they're in, that's it. Some will just aim for the middle of the animal. But some people will be aiming for that spot. They will be aiming for the 24. And I think that's the difference. Most compounds, most crossbow people are always aiming for that 24.
Yeah.
They're aiming for that small. So there isn't maybe the connection with some of the trad guys that are just there to hit the
Yeah.
target, and they're quite happy just to hit the target. They don't understand why somebody would want to take that much effort to just aim that.
Yeah.
I wonder whether that's part of it.
When I've shot mixed groups, and I love shooting mixed groups because I love watching any type of bow being
Yeah,
shot.
they run away at different speeds, and that way. Sorry, I did not mean that. When he's saying mixed groups, he means different disciplines in the same group.
I'd go up first to judge, and then I'd set my sight while other people were shooting, so I'm not causing a delay.
Yeah, and the interesting.
It's just etiquette.
Yeah, but the interesting thing where that's concerned is that a lot of trad shooters will want you to shoot first because they don't want their wooden arrows, their precious wooden arrows, being blown out by a carbon guy putting their arrow in.
They're safe. I generally shoot with the 24.
The number of times that I've actually have destroyed people's carbon arrows that have gone before me.
Yeah.
And I've turned around and told guys when you do, when you got a close shot, and it will do a shoot and pull. So when you shoot it and you pull the arrow out.
Yeah.
I said, you really want to pull that out? And they go, are you sure? And I went, yeah, you want to pull that arrow
Yeah.
out. And then they pull their arrow out, and I put 1132 hole in exactly their hole.
Yep.
And they go, I'm glad I pulled the arrow out. And I'm like, yeah, because the thing that they forget is there's a lot of mass weight in my arrow coming forward. It's 181 feet per second, between 181 and 183 feet per second now from my bow, my flat bow. Yeah. And that's a lot of energy going into the back of a carbon shaft that will blow it to pieces quite happily.
Well, I love shooting Mikuma because to get me down to 300 feet a second, I was shooting 452 grain at 300 feet a second.
It's really quick, isn't it?
The Kuma's a psychopath of a bow.
If you get it wrong, it's like...
If that shoulder comes up half an inch or you relax on the back, and that's going, it's...
Sharon's got a little 52-inch... I think it's a Rebel recurve.
Fairbow Rebel?
No, it's not Fairbow.
Because they do a Rebel, don't they? Fairbow.
Rebel. I'm trying to remember. It's a little recurve. And she calls it the bitch. Because basically, if you get anything wrong with it, it won't hit. But it made her form so good.
Well,
so critical.
I was looking through my EFA scores, and the first EFA championships I shot was my highest score, and I was shooting the Kuma. After that, the Kuma was what? I think I had to wind it down to 72 pound with a full 52 grain arrow. And of course, the week before I'd been at White Mark, and David G had got me to go through the chrono just to check, and I think I went through at 309. That's why I had to wind it down a bit. And everybody, you must have told them at Bow Checker, the EFA bow hunters. So everybody was watching me, and I think I went 297, 298, and 299. I went through that. And I said, it's a good job I wound it down and used a 452 grain arrow. And Jim Metcalf said, what fucking weight you're drawing? I said, 72 pounds. He's like, why the fuck do you want to draw that weight? Yeah. Because I like it.
Yeah. But this
because it made me work hard. The primes are 2-inch longer axle to axle. It's only at 62 pound. And I don't shoot it as well. I should shoot it way better than the Kuma, but I get really lazy on my shot cycle.
But and
the Kuma makes me work.
There's an element where that's good. but there's also an element of fatigue that can build in if you're not careful.
Yeah.
So you got
You've got to shoot Nakuma. It needs shooting a lot
yes.
to stay on top of it. But I will said a harder bow makes you shoot better. And I looked at
A harder bow to shoot.
harder bow to shoot.
So a bow that requires you to be more, I won't say technically proficient, but more in the zone.
You've got to be present in the
Yeah.
shot.
That's it.
The prime, I can get fuzzy in my head and it'll still shoot quite well, but it's the difference between driving a Ford Fiesta and an old TVR. You wanted to make a TVR go fast, you had to be right on top of everything because it'd spin you around and throw you out.
And this is what I was saying about, Sharon's draws are what, 26 and a half?
Yeah.
And that's a 45 at 28.
Yeah.
And she can shoot that. In fact, she can shoot all of her bows are 45 pound at 28. She can shoot all of her bows for 2 days.
Yeah.
And I think part of that is because she used to do so much swimming. I've dropped down to that 40 now. I'll probably try and get the TDR back out, which is the 45, 46-ish.
Yeah.
Because I quite like that bow. But you've seen it. It's a really heavy bow in the hand and it's incredibly stable.
Yeah.
I quite like that bow. It's a good performing bow. But what I'd really like to do is go back to my flat bow.
Yeah.
Start shooting my flat bow again, just because I really like flat bows.
Right,
They're just
now,
something simple.
More of my listeners than anywhere else are from the States. So folks in the States, he's talking about a longbow.
Yeah, I'm talking about what's classified in here as an American flat bow, and you'd call a longbow. So it's a one-piece, continuous D shape or continuous curve, no reflex, deflex in it.
Yeah.
And I like. There's something. I spoke to a lot of guys that shoot longbow, and they get the same feeling about shooting longbows as shooting flatbow. There's just something really basic and simple because there's no tuning on the bow. As long as you got the brace height right, that's it. Everything else is down to how well you make your arrows and the numpty that's shooting the bow. And I just really like that. I shoot hunting tackle far better, yeah. But I love shooting flatbow because it's a very pure form of archery.
Well, Jo's exactly the same, isn't she?
Yeah, she's that.
She's just flatbow is what does it for Joy.
Yeah, and I can get that. But if we kind of bring that back to what we were saying earlier about them versus us, I think that's the thing. You get a lot of people in the NFAS community that shoot for fun. They're not worried about. They know they'll never medal.
Yeah.
But then they get that. Oh, by the way, that's weird squeaking noise. It's not me. It's not him. It's
a seat cover on pleather.
Yes. Just in case you do pick that up. I think a lot of people then don't understand when you do have people that are trying to fine tune and trying to get that pro rings. Yeah. Because they're going, why? Just shoot it. And there's the old adage, oh yeah, okay, well, I might take time setting my sights up, but I'll hit it with my first arrow whilst you'll be raking around trying to find. Yeah. And yes, that does happen.
Yes, to be fair, if you miss with a compound, especially one doing 300 feet a second, you're not finding that arrow. That's going to go like a torpedo underground.
Oh, it must be about 6 or 7, longer than that now. I'd set up the range at the house.
Yeah.
And Andy had come round and he was shooting his crossbow. And was it his crossbow or was it his compound? It might be his compound. Yeah, it was his compound. And he shot unlimited.
Yeah.
He'd been practicing at 20 and then he walked back to 40. Shot it. And I found the arrow about 6 months later in the dirt even with the metal tech.
Oh, yeah.
It's a carbon arrow. And it's like you're only trying to pick up the point.
Yeah.
And I eventually managed to find it 6 months later and it was buried about 4 inches into the ground.
Well, I lost one on the practice field of Paget. It was It was a gold tip. I'd just bought me gold tips, moved from power flights to gold tips.
I like the gold tips.
Oh, gold tippy goodness, they're tough as old boots. Even the ultralights, which it's a light arrow,
Mm.
and they're tougher than nearly anything else out there. But I was using, the sleek Lion Panther.
Yes.
I was using that, and I'd adjusted my sight a little too much, clipped its back, and away it went. And that was 2 weeks before Liberty. The following year, the week before Liberty, we were looking for somebody else's arrow on the practice ground, and I found that one. It had been buried a year and a week. And this is a joy of carbon. I brought it back, took out the insert point, stripped the wrap and fletching off, took the knock off, rebuilt it, and took it to Liberty.
I probably lost it again.
No, my first year at Liberty was awful. I say awful. The experience was amazing. It was my very first open shoot, and
That's a baptism by fire, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd always been told, set yourself achievable goals. And my first open shoot, all I wanted to do was go around without blanking a target. And it was the year The Wizard of Oz was the theme, 2016. And
I didn't go there.
Our first target was, the lion, the big lion. Through a door, they'd put a door frame with an open door on the course, and I misjudged the distance. First arrow went under it. Second arrow, I did what I thought was right. Went to the white peg. Second arrow goes under it, and I'm stood there thinking, for Christ's sake. My first open shoot, my only goal was to not blank a target. And I'm going to blank the very first target of the day. And I got a lucky leg with my third arrow, but that really messed with my head for distance judging. Everything else I was adding 5 to 10 yards onto. And in the first 6 targets, I lost 5 arrows.
I think what's interesting there is that you're talking from the compound point of view.
Yeah.
I still blank courses. I still go to a course and I'll still blank a target. Doesn't happen very often. I did it at the champs. That really annoyed me. But I'll still blank a course. I've never gone round a course shooting trad and hit everything with one arrow. The closest I ever got, I took 4 second arrows at one course. I came in and I'd actually beaten the bare bow guys shooting hunting tackle, which is wooden arrows and feather fletchings, no sights. And but I've never done it, and I've stopped thinking about that now.
Yeah.
Deliberately, I just go, okay, this is the shot. This is the shot. Because if I start thinking, I haven't got any seconds or anything like that, then and I actually I'm relieved when I have to take a second because it means okay, that's it.
It's a Formula One commentator's curse, isn't it? It's 3 laps in front, half a lap to go. Nothing can stop him from winning now.
and this is it. And I think that's an example of putting pressure on yourself.
Yeah.
But I think people do that. I talk to people who are wanting to improve, and I say to them, okay, well, if you're wanting to improve and you go into different tournaments, you go into NFAS particular, you can't consider one course like Club A against Club B, because they're going to have completely different terrain. They're going to have a completely different course list. You can even visit the same club like Long Eaton or Harlequin that'll put on multiple shoots in a year. It won't be the same shots, and that's one of the things that IFA has over it. You go to an IFA course and that's the same. Yeah, that's registered.
It has to be chartered. They're field hunter courses.
So where NFAS is concerned, everyone can be different. You can go to what a club one time and it's brilliant, and the next time it's really, really hard because it's a different course layer. So what you have to do is you have to set yourself 2 objectives. You have to start thinking, right, okay, and the first one is usually, right, I want to go around and bring all my arrows back with me.
Yeah.
And then it's a case of I don't want to blank a target. So that means that you want to be wanting to have reduce the chance of having third arrows.
Yeah.
So that means you're focusing more And then, okay, you want to reduce the number of third arrows, so you're focusing on the second. And I say to them, well, okay, that's great, but what you want to also be thinking about is that if you're going down to a third arrow, you want to make sure that third arrow is a really good scoring arrow, not just, oh, it's in, I don't care about
Yeah.
it. You want to be in that kill zone. You want to, because that way, yeah, it's a third arrow, but it's still a kill. You've brought your focus in,
Yeah.
and you've got to start thinking about that and setting those kind of manageable expectations on yourself.
Do you sometimes find people give up on the third arrow? They've missed on that. I've seen it a few times where folks have shot the first two, and then the third one, it's like, I'm just going to shoot it. I don't give a damn.
I tend to find that people get stressed when they're onto that third, because they'll miss the first one. Yeah, they'll race, or they'll shoot very quickly on the second, and then suddenly it's like, oh, hang on, I'm on to my third.
Yeah.
What's going on here? What happened then? And it's amazing how many people will shoot from a red peg, fall short, move forward to the white peg, and then fall short again because they thought, oh, I've moved forward, so I've got to aim lower effectively.
Yeah.
It's like, well, actually, you dropped low in the first place. Last thing you really want to do.
Yeah. So if the yardage is appropriate, just aim for the same place and you're going to be there.
Yeah. But that's one of the interesting things. I do think, where was I going with this? That kind of setting your expectations and thinking about how you improve.
Yeah.
My archery improved by me shooting more courses.
Yeah.
Because I don't judge distance, but what I do is I remember courses and I remember shots.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting down with a course layer along Eton, and I said, "Oh yeah, you've got this shot in here now. You had this over there last time." And he goes, "What?" He said, "Yeah, you had the bear over there, and then the time before that you had it over there." And he's like, and he just sat there and said, "I set those courses, and I can't remember that." But because the way that my brain works,
Yeah.
because I don't do the gapping aspect, I have to think about, okay, yeah, I've encountered a shot like this before.
Yeah.
And what did I do? What happened? Yeah. And then I go, oh yeah, that happened. So I need to remember that. And then the more you do that, the less consciously you do that.
Yeah.
You just come up and go, yeah, I've shot something like this before. Dum.
Yeah.
And I think the if I'm feeling low, there's two shots I always remember that buck me up. One was at a 3D tournament, and one was down south when I was doing Bowman and Bude. And they had a twice round Bowman and Bude, and it was like a predator prey.
Yeah.
And I remember Sharon shot, and we were shooting a very large stag 3D. You're at a not quite, about a 45-degree angle. You're shooting off the top of this crest,
Yeah.
down across, and then up onto another one. And Sharon got a lovely shot in it. I think she got the front of the 20. And there was a group of marshals lined up, and there was like round of applause. And I was the last one to shoot. And I went, good shot. And we were both shooting flat bow at the time. And I come up, shot it. Yeah. And all I heard is, anything you can do. I went, what is it? I was like, what's going on? I said, can you see where your arrow is? I went, no. I just basically he went, oh, and I went down and I was in smacking the 24.
Oh, nice.
And Sharon insisted on getting a photograph of me. And I was like, oh, no, I'm not a great one for photographs. And that was when a shot where I just felt the shot.
Yeah.
And that was really good. One where I had to concentrate on, and this is why I going right back to the beginning of this podcast, I said coaches tend to focus on where you need to improve. They don't necessarily. One I had to focus on was we were doing the 3D champs, and it was down Exeter way, and we'd gone into the second. So listeners can understand. When you're shooting a 3D NFAS course, you've got 36 or 40 targets, and you usually go past catering twice. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we'd gone past catering once because we shot about 10 targets and gone in, and then we've got the other. We did the other part of the loop.
Yeah.
And when we got back to catering, they'd already closed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because the caterers, which we didn't realize at the time, were the same caterers that were doing the main campsite. So they'd packed early to get down to the main campsite for all the
Yeah, ready
camping.
for folks getting back.
So it was like, right, okay. And we then went back out to shoot the remaining of the course.
Yeah.
And there were two groups in front of us waiting to shoot. So we just had to wait. There's nothing you could do. By the time it was our turn to shoot, there were 6 groups behind us waiting.
Damn.
Because already had gone to catering. They couldn't have any food.
Yeah.
And rather than sitting there, they thought, well, we'll just carry on. So when you bear in mind that most groups are between 4 and 5 people.
Yeah.
Yeah. You've got, what, 6, 24
to 30 people.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was like, right. And I've got a thing. I'm not a big fan of being watched.
Yeah.
Shooting. And I was shooting with 3 relatively new archers.
Yeah.
And it's unusual for me not to know anybody on the circuit or in the group. And they'd all shot before. They shot before me, and only one of them on their 3rd arrow had hit it. And it was the standing elk. And it was set at about 55-ish yards, apparently. Don't ask me, but that's what I'm told later. And we watched the 2 groups in front of us shoot it, and very few people were getting it. A few were getting on the 2nd arrow, a lot of them were getting on the 3rd, very few, on the 1st. And it was a nicely set target. And I was the last one to shoot. So by the time I was getting to shoot, there were like these 6 groups. And I know one of the guys that was shooting in my class, who's a good shot, was also in the group behind me.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, right, okay, don't mess this up, Rob. Bring your focus in. Bring it away from all of them into that shot. And I remember standing there and thinking, right, and I'm saying to myself, you shot these distances before. You're gonna be able to hit it, and you've shot these distances, and you've hit the target.
Yeah.
So just do it again. Just take your time and do it. And I came up and I let it go, and it dropped just outside the 24. It was in the 20. And I was the only person in my group to hit that. And I was the only person in the 2 groups that the other people had been watching to hit it with my 1st arrow. And I just pulled my hat down and carried it. and then just walked forward. And the guys in my group said, oh, that's an amazing shot. Yeah, really, really well done. And I'm thinking, yeah, okay, I've done it. But I did it because I brought the shot into my control. I brought that confidence of, you've done this before. You can do it again.
Yeah.
You will do it again. You will be successful. It's that positive kind of mantra going forward. And then blocking out what's going on around you. And what I said previously, that you can't affect how that person's shooting.
Yeah.
The only way you could affect that person shooting is if he lets your shooting affect him.
Yeah.
And Andy Betts said to me years ago, as a great bit of advice, is that, oh, such and such is trying to get into your head, or trying to get into my. I was talking to him about it.
Yeah.
And excuse me. And he said, if he's trying to get into your head, you're already in his.
Oh.
And that's a brilliant thing to remember. Because if somebody's trying to get into your head and he's doing it, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh you're not shooting well, oh you're shooting that. If he's trying to get into your head, that means, well, why is he doing it? Is he doing it just because he's a big-headed prat, or is he doing it because he's concerned about what you're capable of?
Yeah.
Now I've always said I'm an average archer who has exceptional days, but there's a few times that I've had that happen where somebody's trying to get into my head.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's interesting. And I remember Andy saying to him, look, if he's trying to do that, you're already in his head. You're already doing something that's playing on
Yeah.
his mind. And for me, the weirdest thing was suddenly being in that position.
Yeah.
Because I used to follow Paul Meeson, Andy Betts, several other of the flatbow guys, thinking, and this goes back to what I was saying about thinking about setting yourself expectations when you go to a shoot.
Yeah.
You know, you try to reduce the blanks. You're going to find out somebody that you know that's shooting in your class or a similar class to you, and is potentially a better shot than you.
Yeah.
And then see how far behind them you are. Because if you can find something, and I used to base myself off Meeson.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I was 40 points near to Meeson's score, I knew I'd shot well because Meeson was phenomenal. That gives you a bench line as to how tough that course was.
Yeah.
So not only are you then looking at how you're improving and you're reducing your blanks to third arrows, your third arrows to second arrows, your wounds to kills and stuff like that. You're also being able to judge how tough that course is.
Yeah.
Because you know how good or how well the good archers are shooting.
Yeah.
So if I'm ever on a course and I want to see the results, the first thing I'll do is, I'll look at mine. But then whether I'm shooting flatbow or shooting hunting tackle, did I get our description of hunting tackle in case in earlier is a recurve or usually no sights, wooden arrows, feather fletchings. If I want to know what I'll do is I'll check the bare bow score,
Yeah.
trad bow hunter score, and then I'll check usually the compound limited. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is there's some phenomenal trad bow hunters out there.
Yeah.
There's some really good bare bow archers out there. And the compound limited, which is sighted with pins, but not with a release aim.
Yeah.
For those listening, is a good one to compare single strings against, because you can't really compare bow hunter, which is a compound without sights, because there aren't that many of them.
No,
there now.
That's just fast trad, isn't it?
Well, yeah,
it
was bare bow with a compound.
Yeah.
But if you want to try and judge how tough a course is,
Yeah.
you look at those classes. So if I'm shooting hunting tackle, I'll look at the bare bow.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that'll give me an idea how close I am to bare bow.
Yeah.
And there are times I've beaten bare bow when I'm shooting well with my hunting tackle rig. If you're wanting to get a judgment as to how well you've performed, then find somebody who's in your class that you wish to, I don't want to say emulate, but is a good baseline.
Yeah.
And the strangest thing I had was somebody come up to me and say that they were doing that to me, that I had become one of those, but their baselines.
Yeah.
And that's when I suddenly realized, actually, no, I've gone from just being somebody who shoots to somebody who actually is shooting reasonably quite well and fairly consistently. And other people are now using me as a baseline.
Yeah.
And that was a weird thing. I think that's probably when I started getting a bit of anxiety.
I mean, the first people I looked at like that were Fletch and Roger Ball. I used to think if I could get within 100 points of them, because I mean, you can see some massive spreads across Unlimited from the top boys and everybody else. If I could get within 100 points of them, I was doing well.
Mm.
And then there was like Tony Hunt. I mean, that man's a human rangefinder, and Tony Hunt. If I was within 150 of him, I was doing really well.
And this is it. You
and then,
quickly find the people, don't you?
I was like blown away when, I can't remember what year it was now, I came third at Liberty and I'd beaten Tony Hunt. And I'd beaten Fletch on spots. And it was like, oh, wow.
I remember doing Liberty one year. I'm trying to remember whether it was it's always a fancy dress party. I'm trying to
Winter Wonderland, the video of it's up on, This is one of the videos up on YouTube.
And I was shooting hunting tackle, and Roger Hands had put in a phenomenal score on the first day. And it was one of the weird ones. It was 42 targets.
Yeah.
Because for some, I don't know why Liberty does that. So it's usually because of the capacity. Yeah,
Yeah.
They used to put more targets on.
Yeah, my first shoot there in 2016 was 42 targets.
Yeah, and I shot it, and first day I'd shot okay, around about like 660, 680.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there was the awards on the second day, and I never clock what my scores are. I take a photograph of them, and then I worry about it. I'll
Yeah.
analyze it later. And the awards got announced, and in I can't remember who came third. Somebody came third, and then they said Roger Hand second place. I said to Sharon, I said, "What's Roger then? Who's beating Roger?" And Sharon said, "You." I went, "What?" And then it's like Rob Jones, and I went up, and I think it was Shrek from Seven Valley that came third, and Roger and Shrek are both quite a bit larger than I am.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm in the middle with it for the photograph. And Roger comes up to me and says, "What did you score today?" And I went, "I don't know. I can't remember." And I got my phone out, and I got 742.
Wow.
And he went, "You what?" And I went, "Yeah." And Sharon says, "Yeah, you didn't actually clock it, but you were absolutely nailing things all day. You were just going up and going, dum, dum,
Yeah.
not even thinking about it." And it's because we shot the course on the first day, and because of the way my memory works and the way I see things,
Yeah.
even if they move the pegs, it's like, oh yeah, I can remember them,
Yeah.
and I do it, and I remember that, and I'm thinking, wow, that was weird. Okay, fine. And that was just shooting hunting tackle. But the weird thing is, I find hunting tackle in some ways easier than shooting a flat bow, because you've got more variables that you can tune in. So you got your button, you got your rest, you got your tillering on your bow. And as you know, I've got a Samick Vision riser.
Yeah.
And I've got the cap. So it's a high performance carbon fiber. It's a good bow.
Yeah.
But I used to get loads of grief of shooting that bow in hunting tackle, because people would say, "Why are you shooting an Olympic recurve? Shouldn't you be shooting a wooden bow in hunting tackle, shouldn't it?" And it's like,
Well, no, it's in the rules.
Well, no, I bought the bow to shoot bare bow, and then my flat bow broke. We were up at the Welsh Champs, and it rained really badly.
Yeah.
And what I did on the first day and on the second day, the bow wasn't performing, so I was losing. And I'd actually found out that water had got in, and it had cracked the upper limb. I've still got the bow. I've not got rid of it. It's in the bow room, which is my home office, and I've still got it. But then I thought, well, okay, I can't shoot my flat bow. And Sharon tried to get me another flat bow, but the replacement had the reflex deflex in it. And I thought, okay. I thought, oh well, I'll just get some wooden shafts and I'll shoot this for a bit of fun.
Yeah.
And then I started shooting hunting tackle with it, and yeah, it was. But I just found it easy because you've tried it. It sits in my hand perfectly, and it's just like
really nice.
Yeah, and it's an old Samick Vision with a wooden handle and some Cap Windstorm limbs that I got from Merlin because they were the end of season, and I managed to get a deal on them.
Nice.
But that's what 12 years.
Yeah, the
ago.
stuff always shoots better when you've got it as a real bargain, doesn't it?
But it looks nice too, because it's like it's a bright red riser, and there's red and black detailing on the limbs, and it just kind of comes together.
Better it looks, the better it shoots.
Yeah, which probably explains why I don't shoot very well if you look at me. But it's just weird how things work out.
Yeah.
But I do think there is that playoff between trads and non-trads, and I think part of it is a vocal minority. We're going right.
Yeah.
It is a bit of a vocal minority, and I think some of it does come from a lack of understanding as to how precise those compound guys really
Yeah.
want to be, or the crossbow guys really want
Oh,
to
yeah.
be. Whereas the others are just happy to hit it.
And there's a difference between trying to hit it and trying not to miss it.
Yes. Yes.
That's the difference. Everybody's trying to hit the 24s. Unlimited trying not to miss the 24s.
Yeah. That's a good analogy actually, because the guy that won the indoor champs this year
Carl Bowles.
hit, there were 40 targets and he on over
Yeah.
the 2 days. And I don't think he dropped 124 or one.
He finished after 2 days, 2 points off a clean score.
That was it. So he
2
was-
points
yeah,
off maximum.
Yeah. Which means that he had 110.
Yeah. That
So
was
that was
phenomenal
160 arrows.
shooting.
That means he hit with 159 arrows.
Yeah. That was
Because
phenomenal
You had-
shooting.
you had to shoot 2 arrows, each arrow scoring 12 points, 10 points, or 8 points. So he's dropped 1. That's amazing.
Yeah.
The distances weren't as great as you'd normally see, but the consistency of being able to do that.
Yeah.
Because I was speaking to some of the crossbow guys on the second day, and they were saying they were really tired because they're not used to shooting that many bolts. Normally, they will shoot, they do 40 targets, they'll shoot 40
Yeah.
bolts, maybe 42. And that was really fatiguing. And I think that's the difference that the trad guys were feeling, because it's not unusual for us to shoot more than 40 if it's a 40 target course.
This is where EFA shooters, the folks that shoot EFA as well, particularly classification rounds.
Because you're shooting 4 every target. 4?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
4. Yeah. They shoot 112 arrows per round.
But this is why, when I was competing and when I was doing this really seriously,
Yeah.
I've just remade them. I've just remade 2 bag bosses, which I'd blown out. But I would go out and I've got a little clicker that I'd do.
Yeah.
And I'd start a few weeks beforehand. And I'd go out usually 2 or 3 times in the week.
Yeah.
And I'd shoot 60 to 80 arrows each time. And the following week, I might shoot 80, 90 arrows each time.
Yeah.
And then gradually build it up. And then the week before, I'd actually ease off. I'd actually shoot less arrows.
Marathon runners training.
Is it?
Yeah, that's how
it's just-
marathon runners train.
And it's basically, I just found that to work really, really well for me. I wouldn't do a competition the weekend before a tournament, a big tournament, the champs. I just practice at home, but I've got the facility to do that.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't necessarily, I'd do it, and I'd take photographs, and sometimes I put them up on Instagram. But that I use like an 8-inch white. There used to be a pizza base, or 8-inch white pizza base, and I draw a black circle in the middle, and that's what I do. So I wouldn't have like gold and red and roundels on, and I wouldn't necessarily have. But what I'd do is I'd put that, and I'd practice, and that's the way that worked for me. Wouldn't work for everybody, but that helped.
I mean, the traditional world archery colours, the gold, the red, the blue. Apparently, those colours were picked because they're hard to aim. They're hard to pick a spot on, as opposed to the white with a black spot or the black with a white spot. That's why they went with those colours, to make it more difficult to aim.
Yeah, and it is because what ends up happening is it's the thing that I find with shooting monocolored 3D.
Yeah,
because there's like white rams and there's out there. I find them really hard because I like to try and see
last year. Sorry, that's the one you blanked at Paget. That the long white, and you said then it was the colouring.
Yeah, I can't. I need to pick something out.
Yeah.
I remember talking to a British sniper about this, and he was saying the fact that he never shot the person. He would shoot the button.
Yeah.
Or the crease in his shirt or something like that. That's where he was. And it's the same thing, because I'd pick a thing. And if it's just big and white and I can't pick something out, I really struggle. I really
You
struggle.
saying that, we had, you know, the 6 foot standing Reinhardt bear.
Hmm.
We had one, it was repaired and then painted all white. And time after time, I'd drill the 24 when it was the brown because of the shading. I'd got something I could aim on.
Yeah.
And when it was just painted a uniform white, I struggled to hit the 24. I'd hit the 20, but I'd hit the 24 nowhere near as often.
If you think about it, if we were in a hunting environment,
Yeah.
or if you look at any bird, mammal, or anything like that, they're not monochrome.
No.
There's distinctions with them.
Yeah.
And your eyes are designed to pick out, or your eyes and your brains are designed to pick out minute changes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, if you've got a slight tarnish on a black sheet or a white sheet of paper, you'll see that straight away because it's the contrast. Because you can't see that contrast in that target,
Yeah.
then you struggle.
Well, when this bear was repainted white, it was repainted gloss white.
Oh, that's horrible.
Yeah. So even where there are differences in the surface, the reflections across it, it's a blob.
Yeah, and that's why I've got a couple of Wild Creek targets I bought last year, and I really like one of them, but I really don't like the other one. And it's interesting because I've got the little javelina.
Yeah,
and I really like that.
Stink pig.
It's just a really nice, solid target.
Yeah.
I then got the Dicker,
Dick.
which
The
is
tiny little
no,
African.
not the tiny. No, it's a fair size, small deer.
Yeah.
It's not the one you're thinking about, which is small. But I don't like that one because it's just brown, and what I've found is the coating on it doesn't last as well as the one on the 3D. So if you do put an arrow into it, the color on the foam seems to deform a bit more than the javelina.
Yeah.
And the javelina's got a lovely texture to it. And I had them out for 3 months, 4 months on the range, shooting into it over time. I found that little dick-dack, or whatever it is, dicker. I'll have to look it up in a minute. It seemed to absorb the water more as well. So he's put in my greenhouse for ages to try and dry it out. But it is interesting. It's nice having the range at home and having, for those of you don't know, and Rich, you've been down there quite a lot.
Yeah.
I've got a 40-yard marked range in 5-yard increments. But on the other side of the field, I've got a couple of bosses out on unmarked distances, haven't I?
Yeah.
And I'm in the process of putting some more out along there. So there'll be the ability for somebody who can come and they'll be able to shoot a marked distance. They'll be able to get their ranges in, or their eye in, or their gap in, or whatever the method they're using. And then they'll be able to try and transfer that information to the unmarked distances.
Yeah.
And TradSnipe, I'd put one up and TradSnipe said, "Oh, that's 45 meters." And I went, "No." And he said, "Oh, was I under or over?" And it says, "You're about 12 meters over." And he went, "No, it was about, I think it's something like
really
37.
difficult on camera shots, though, unless you know the focal length of that camera and you're used to that.
But also on that shot particularly, and you know what the field's like. I've got a lot of trees in there.
Yeah.
On that shot, you're actually stood away back. There's a bit of a bramble patch in front of you, and then you've just got completely open grass going then into the copse at the bottom. So you've got this kind of like expanse.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to judge when there's nothing there. If you look at trees, you can get an idea. But if there's nothing there, and then suddenly he goes into a tree, you're thinking, oh, actually, no. But yeah. So I'm working on that. I'm also working on. I'm gonna I'm gonna have a play because I've got two rubble sacks full of foam offcuts
Oh,
that have basically from old bosses.
yeah,
Because I went up to a scout site. You know, Sharon's involved with the scouts.
yeah,
She's an assessor for the archery. I was showing them how to rebuild their bosses.
Yeah.
And they had a load of really badly shot out bosses, which we managed to make. I think we made two usable bosses
Yeah.
out of. And I said, well, what are you going to do with the foam? And they said, well, we're just going to bin it. I said, well, can I have it? So I brought back like 4 or 5 bin bags full of this old foam.
yeah,
And now that I've got the better part, or I have got 2 rubble sacks, which are the big, like 1 meter square
Yeah.
cubes sacks. And what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to cut down some of the rubble sacks and I'm going to see if I can make what I'd call a catching bag. So if you know how to bag boss,
Yes.
I'm going to try and make basically bag bosses that are about 1.5 meters by a meter tall. And I'm going to drop them into the cops and then put the 3Ds in front. So they
Oh,
don't
ideal.
become, they're not there as target bosses. They're there as
a
catch
catch boss.
bosses.
Yeah, that makes
And
sense.
because I've got like, some of these rubble sacks and I've got all this off cuts of foam, I'm
Yeah.
thinking, well, actually, let's give it a go.
Oh, yeah,
Because that way, what I can do is I can move those 3Ds around anywhere
yeah,
and just have a couple of pins, or I'll probably use bamboo poles so that, and then just have it so that they will just fall in behind
yeah.
the 3Ds, and it means I can move them anywhere I want.
That makes
And that
perfect
means
sense.
I've got a couple of bosses out that will be permanently set up with paper faces on.
Yeah,
But then I can put a couple of these 3Ds out and then just drop a good catching thing so that
Yeah.
it just speeds up the process of people. And I just want to do that because I think when people come to me and they want a bit of coaching, or even for like those who are going for the beginners course, being able to kind of get them to be able to shoot a known distance and then transfer that onto an unmarked distance
yeah,
really gives them some confidence.
yeah,
And that's quite nice. And, I'm curious to see what's going to happen tomorrow because I've got a group of people coming that are archery GB field archers.
yeah.
I'm taking them around an NFAS course, and I'm curious to see what that's going to be like. But yeah, it's all good fun.
Should be interesting. That should be interesting. Of course, theirs is unknown distance anyway.
Yeah, but
World Archery 3D.
we did this with the scouting organisation in the UK works on the principle that you have scout leaders or
Yeah.
club leaders or leaders within the scouts.
Yeah,
And they have to get a certification for each activity. So whether it be camping, wild camping, climbing, or anything like that. And Sharon is one of the assessors for that in
Yeah.
the region. And she brought some of the other assessors down to the wood, and they'd never shot a field course before. And it was quite interesting.
it's got to be an eye opener.
Well, it is because you're taking them round and they're saying, well, why have you got this shot in, or why have you got this? And,
Yeah,
and I say, and this was when the old course was in. And I was saying, well, actually, that boss is going to be replaced with a 1300 boss. And they're saying, why? He says, well, from a risk assessment point of view, that's a 900 boss. But because it's shooting to a boundary, I'm going to put a 1300 boss in
Yeah.
there to reduce the risk of it. And it's all about mitigating risk. And we were talking about how, where they're concerned, they're obviously always shooting on a range
yeah,
with us. And it's an interesting thing because Sharon was saying the fact that each 2 years or 3 years, they have to do some kind of CPD activity. Or actually, no, each year they have to do a CPD activity.
hang on, what's a CPD activity?
Continual professional development, or
Right.
continual proven development, so that they can show that they're developing their skills or at least keeping on track.
Yeah,
And NFAS has got a sort of similar thing, but not quite as stringent. So they had this down, and we took them round. I think there was 8 or 9 of them round a field course, and it was all about them. And they were sort of going, "Oh, right, okay. So you've got to not only think about an overshoot on a range, but you've got to think about how that fits into an overshoot from another target over there or
Yeah.
another target over here, and your risk assessment and which path you're taking, and it was a real eye opener for them because they've never encountered anything
Yeah.
like that. And this is, I think, that's one of the beauties of doing things that are across different classes and across different styles, is that you get people that cross pollination of ideas, or
Yeah.
they go away and think, oh wow, could you do this, or can you do that? We've got a couple of people that are going through a coaching currently, and they're rifle shooters, they're shotgun shooters, and they're skeet shooters. And I walked them around the course when the course was closed, when we were doing some field work, and I was explaining the different shots, and they're going, oh, hang on. And because they're reading the distances, and they're not just shooting clays out of the
Yeah.
they're doing the ones that are going around the ground as well. They're kind of going, oh, hang on, that's a different viewpoint because there's more ground there than I realized.
Yep.
And then they go, oh, that's pretty close. And then they walk up and go, actually, no, that's the smaller target than I thought it, or
Yeah.
a large target than I thought it was. And they're, because they've got a rifling principle, and then because they're not using any kind of scope, they're immediately going, oh, yeah, I can see what
Yeah.
that appeal is. But this is, again, it's like just bringing in different ideas and talking to people and saying, oh, are we going to do this, or are we going to do that? And I've got one shot that I've suggested for Steve, which is a predator prey if it pulls off. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the predator close and the prey further away.
Oh.
Because then the problem with predator prey is a lot of people shoot them and they won't be sure if they're in the predator before they go for the prey.
Yeah.
By bringing the predator close, as though the predator's about to start stalking the prey, it gives you more chance to have that shot, and then they're going to move forward, have to potentially move forward to then do the second shot. And it's just changing things up a bit.
Keeps it interesting.
It does, and because it's very easy to do, like, you do it at Padgett. You do the whole idea of you go around and you shoot as a 3D, and then you do the second round as a 2D.
Yeah.
2Ds or paper faces. And I quite like that aspect because it still keeps it going. And it keeps the interest because, going around the same thing twice is very boring.
Yeah.
Did you have the moving ball again?
We did. That's now a permanent installation after this time.
Is it?
Yeah. Loz did such an amazing job building a hard install for it. It's absolutely fantastic.
I really like that. I think it's quite nice because it's not a silly distance. It's a good sized target.
Yeah.
And you've got a good chance of getting it no matter what you're shooting or what age you are or anything like that.
Well, I tried it with my trad bow and hit it.
Excuse me, can you just go?
Yeah. See, we had, hang on, just muted Rob's. This year at Padgett, what we did was we had the paper faces where we couldn't match them as we wanted to. So it was just twice round the same course, but people actually really, really enjoyed it. And because of the time of year we have our shoot, we've got about just over 2.25 acres of woods, 2x18. Having it in February, it's still getting dark reasonably early, so it's quite a quick course to get round. And we started, first arrows were loose just gone 10 o'clock, and I think last archers were in about 2:45, 3 o'clock. So it was a quick day, and it tends to be. But yeah, the moving target went down an absolute storm.
It's a good target. I've seen there was who did it? I think Spirit of Sherwood did it. And they actually literally had a barn door moving. And it was about 4x6 target.
Yeah.
And on a long rail, and it went quite quickly, and you were all lined up and you all had to shoot at the same time.
Oh, I like the idea of that volley fire.
And I think don't think Sharon got it that year because I think she got the sticker saying, "Yes, I can miss a barn door." The year before, they had a Falcon, really, the small Falcon 3D,
Yeah.
and she 24'd that
Damn.
moving down, and it's like, so it's interesting moving targets,
Yeah.
and there's a technique for shooting them.
It's
which I use.
hard with a compound. I mean, I was Rich Edwards missed it both times, but he's shooting a hinge release,
You see,
and the only way you're going to shoot a moving target with a hinge release is to punch the hinge release, literally rip it back to rotate it. So
you see the way that I approach it is I don't track the animal. I don't track the movement.
yeah,
Well, do you know how you always do a run through so you can actually
Yes.
see the speed it runs
Yeah.
across? As it runs past, what I do is I clock where the 20 and the 24 is.
Yeah.
And then I'll wait. And after it's gone past, I'll pick a piece of foliage behind.
Yeah.
That's where it was. Yeah. So I'll draw up and I'll aim at that piece of foliage and I'll say go. And as soon as it basically crosses the tip of my arrow, then
Yeah.
I'll release. I won't be kind of doing any of that. I'm aiming at a static spot over there and just
aiming at a static spot rather than shooting it clay pigeon style where you're leading it and tracking.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because that works. And I think when I got 220s on it last time.
A lot of people that I saw miss it this year were shooting way too early.
Yeah.
Way too early. And
Because they think their bows are, or it's going faster, or their bows are so slow.
Yeah.
And bows are, at that distance, bows aren't that slow.
what was it? Might have been about 11 yards. The shot was
Yeah,
11, 12
not
yards.
far. It's not far.
No.
That's why I like it, because it's doable for the kids as well as
Yeah.
for the adults, and doable for people who are shooting slow bows.
See, the holly had been trimmed a bit, so we'd got 3 1300 bosses on the bottom.
Yeah.
We could have got away with that left-hand one, but because you could see it coming through the holly, we thought we don't want folks seeing it and loosing. So 3 1300 bosses on the bottom, and then 2 900 bosses stacked on top of those because it was quite a high ramp. Plus, you had the height of the target on it. If you clipped the back of it, you'd have gone over a 1300 boss.
Yes.
So it was belt and braces to make sure you couldn't.
Are you shooting off
Get back.
the bank still? Or
No.
Are you shooting on the ground?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, on the ground, but if I remember rightly, it was on a little knobble about that big,
Yeah.
just to affect your balance a little
Yeah.
bit. Like I say, that's with the topography we've got at Paget. Really, that's all we can do to make shots awkward. Just if you've got a lump, put the peg right on top of the lump, so your front foot's there and your back foot's there. Or find a narrow one
Tell
with
you
the
one
peg
thing
on
that
the
you
front.
could do at yours, because you've got some gullies in yours.
Yeah.
If you wanted to do it as a moving target, have the ramp going down into a gully, so it looks like the boar or a javelina or something like that is running into
Yeah.
a ground. In fact, if you put porcupines, it looks like it's actually running into a hole in
Yeah.
the ground.
Unfortunately, this year all the gullies were full of water. It's the first time I've seen it with all the gullies full.
Yeah, because we were flying back that day.
Yeah,
We landed just before the rain hit, but that was a very interesting landing at Birmingham.
we were fortunate. I don't think at Paget the rain didn't hit. We had a couple of little light showers, but the rain didn't really hit until raffle prizes. That's when it
I
started.
was lucky because we
We were very fortunate. It was forecast to be a lot worse than it was.
Yeah, because I was watching on the app because we had to leave the hotel at 4 a.m. and I was kind of working through what the time differences was
Yeah,
as to what time we'd be landing in Birmingham. And the landing was Sharon's not great on landing. She's flown loads, but she hates landing.
yeah.
And this one was very much a you're coming in, you're doing
Yeah.
that. And even little man was like, he's like, what's going on? And he's like, and then it's like bang, and you're
Oh, I
down.
can imagine. Yeah,
But yeah, that was
yeah. I know what time you were landing. I was looking up,
about
thinking.
11. I think we ended up landing about 11:30.
So I was looking, thinking, I wonder if Rob's on that one.
It's not. If you ever, don't know if you have you ever flown into Jersey Airport?
No, I've only ever flown once. That was to Benidorm and back
Right.
last year.
Jersey's got a really weird airport because Jersey's a smallish island in
Yeah.
the British Channel. But what you do is you approach over the sea. Yeah. So you're approaching over the sea, approaching over the sea, approaching over the sea, and then you suddenly, if you're looking out the window, you suddenly see land, and then it's literally you land.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's really kind of like you're thinking, oh yeah, the sea's quite far away, oh, there's land, bang, and you're down,
Yeah.
and it's like, whoa, that's
Feel
a
as though you're
bit-
just dropping out.
Yeah, it's really, really weird. But it gets fogged in quite a lot. But that's a really weird one to land on. I haven't flown at many airports.
Yeah.
When you think about it, considering what some people do, but that's a very noticeable one.
Yeah.
A very noticeable one. Vancouver does a similar approach. Vancouver's you come out over the sea and you come in, but the Jersey one, because the land is that little bit higher, it's just a really
Yeah.
weird.
Suddenly you're there.
Yeah. But like in reverse, you're sort of like going. You take off, and then suddenly the sea immediately. Oh, I'm glad you got that right. I'm glad you got that right.
Right. How are we going to grow this sport with youngsters, bringing youngsters in?
Oh,
So, I mean,
make it more appealing for them.
yeah, NFAS is an aging society, isn't it?
First off, I think don't have stupid distances for the kids. Don't have them too close, because the one thing I've learned is that kids don't tend to be able to teapot down that well.
Yeah.
But certainly make it more appealing for them. Make it so that they come off and they feel like they've done well. Because if you get a junior involved, and mine's coming up to 8 now, he's still interested in doing it because he does it with us.
Yeah.
But it can be, it can be quite disheartening when you start shooting. I've said before, and I've said it on my podcast when I did a review of the indoor champs, I think they got the distances wrong for the juniors there.
Yeah.
He's shooting, or was shooting, a little 16-pound recurve, maybe an 18-inch draw, 18.5-inch draw length. Yeah, so he's not a huge poundage. So you've got to have targets that are a reasonable distance.
Yeah.
But there isn't really a lot of clubs that have juniors in. And getting them involved, I think part of the problem is the what's perceived stigma of shooting paper-faced animal faces rather than roundels.
Yeah.
Now that you can put a zombie target out or a dinosaur target out, stuff like that, and then that's not too much problem.
Yeah.
But if you put something that looks like a cute little rabbit, or if you put something out that looks like a fox, we had a complaint at our course, because the land is used by other people during the week.
Yeah.
We can't have any UK, if I remember correctly, UK animals. We can't have like foxes or badgers or anything like that on there. Or no, UK endangered species.
Yeah.
Because we had a red squirrel out, and they went, "Oh no, you can't be shooting a red squirrel." It's like, I'm not shooting a red squirrel. I'm shooting a paper face of a red squirrel. And it's like, oh no, we can't do that. And it's because there's that kind of perception of, oh, you're shooting Bambi or you're shooting Thumper or stuff like
I
that.
remember, it was pre-lockdown, wasn't there a club in Nottinghamshire that had complaints because somebody had gone wandering round and they'd seen the paper faces, and somebody went round and vandalised the paper faces because they thought they must be sick and twisted.
Pines Park, they had their target faces vandalised.
Yeah.
But there's other clubs that I know that can't put out any face that is classified as an endangered species. So you wouldn't be able to put like a black rhino or a white rhino out.
Yeah.
That's an endangered species. But there's that kind of perception.
What, so every time you shoot a paper face, a real one dies in Africa?
No, let's not get out. But there's that perception that, oh, you're shooting that, so therefore you must be like pro hunting, or you must be going out and shooting the local stags or the local cats or the local. And this is it. And so I think that's a bit of a thing. We've had one of my son's mates from school came round, and then, oh no, it wasn't. It was somebody that approached us, and we said, "Well, we're shooting these paper faces," and they went, and the parents went, oh, "I don't know how he's going to feel about shooting an animal face." And the kid just went up and he just shot it, because to them it's just a paper
Yeah.
face. It doesn't.
It's just a picture.
Yeah.
That's it.
So I think doing something along those lines, you're doing like outreach sessions. But again,
Yeah.
because we shoot animal faces, that I think in some ways is almost hindering. It's like in the scout organization, you can't shoot an animal face. You can't shoot anything that's a.
They can't even shoot zombies, can they? Because they're humanoid shape.
Yeah, that's right. So you could maybe make it fun by shooting like ghosts or something like that.
Yeah.
But that's part of the problem. I don't think a lot of clubs have got juniors in that are young juniors. You've got a lot of clubs that might have like 12-year-olds and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and it gets a bit easier for them. But for the very young ones, you don't get it. You get. I think it's in the States. There's like a young group, an archery group, isn't there? Isn't there a junior, like a junior support system in
They've got JOAD, which is the Junior Olympic Archery Development, but
that's
they also
Olympic.
do NASP, which is National Archery in Schools program.
Yeah.
I think it was Adrian Caddy was responsible for that over here.
But it does. You don't really get that, and
No.
I think it's a shame, because I think it's a really good sport for young children to get into, because
Yeah.
one, it gets them out of the house. Two, they're outside in the woodland. They're out. They're active. They're doing things. They're in nature. It's good
Yeah.
for their mental health. They're learning a skill which requires concentration. They're engaging with adults. I remember at the 3D champs, not the 3Ds, the indoor
Yeah.
champs. I had a couple of people come up and say, your young man is amazing, because he could actually have a conversation. And of
Yeah.
course, he's been shooting since he was 4, so he knows how to draw arrows. He knows how to shoot. And
Yeah.
he's transitioning to compound, which is going to prove to be interesting, I think. But the ability to then have those sort of conversations kind of helps that maturity.
Yeah.
And I think it's a great thing for them to get into, but it's just really hard. I think we need, there was a great thing on the latest Push podcast about like televising a 3D course and how great that would be. But then the flip side of that is you might have some people turning around saying, "Oh, well, why are you shooting 3D animals?" And isn't that, yeah. And it's like you've got this kind of playoff. I do think that it is very good for physically and mentally for people.
Oh, definitely.
And I don't have an easy answer to it. I think, you could do like mini tournaments.
Yeah.
So that rather than them having to shoot a full 40 course, they could shoot a couple of, a 20 target course or a 30 target course. But it's getting that momentum. You could write out to the scouts organizations and stuff like that. But again, you've got this situation with the scouts that they can't shoot faces. So you can't do it as a scouting element. And I think it's a bit sad. It would be great that, in the scouting organization, they do a lot of archery. They do encourage archery.
Yeah.
But when people think of archery, they tend to think of target archery.
Yeah, they think Vicarage Lawn.
Yeah, and it's, that's pretty boring in many ways. It's great because you're developing repetition.
Yeah.
It's great because you're getting that kind of like same distance time and time again.
Yeah.
But that boredom, or that potentially develops into boredom. Whereas what we do, because we're out and we're walking around and you're going to be interested.
Yeah.
Is far more interesting, and I think it's far more exciting for them. But you've got to have people's awareness of it, and people's awareness or intelligent awareness of it, that it's
Yeah.
not just, oh, you're going around shooting foam animals because you want to go off and shoot real animals. Well, no, you're just shooting a target. It's just a paper face. That's it.
Yeah.
And I think it's not helped when you see reports in the media that hype up. And I think we've spoken about this before, like, oh, a crossbow attack has taken place. Oh,
Yeah.
my God. Well, hang on. How many knife crimes? I really want to watch that. I haven't watched it yet. The Idris Elba did this knife crime thing.
I saw that. It's something I'm going to have to watch. Yeah, I mean, when I did my response to the government call for evidence,
Mm.
see, I was a little bit disappointed with NFAS there because they just used it. It's a good way for disabled people to. So you can't use that phrase anymore, can you? Less able, is it? Less able people to get into shooting.
Mm.
I included the facts and figures from the Office of National Statistics. I think it was 2022, 2023, 49,000 knife incidents,
Mm.
3,500 non-air firearm related incidents. How heavily legislated are firearms?
Yeah. And I
And
think,
it still didn't stop there being 3,500 crimes.
and the thing being is, bows are out there. It's very
Yeah.
easy. You can go down to Decathlon, you can pick up a bow, you can get
Yeah.
them off eBay, you can get them off Amazon. What we want to try and do is we want to try and promote acceptable uses of them.
Yeah.
And that's where, that's where clubs come in. That's where, organizations like NFAS,
Yeah.
who should be trying to promote it as best they can. And they do try and do that, no disrespect to them. But it's that aspect that, there's this question as to, well, okay, should you restrict bows to only being coming from archery shops? And okay, yeah, there's an element where that's concerned that I can understand.
I can understand it even if I don't agree with it.
Yeah. And thing is, it's like, there's like the sucker arrows stuff, having them in Decathlon, that's not
Yeah.
a problem. When you start being in a situation where you can go out and just buy a crossbow compound or anything like that, my view is it's more beneficial for the individual to do that from a shop that is actually an archery shop where it's got
Yeah.
clued in, and B, to be able to go to a club and have some instruction.
Yeah.
Because it's bloody easy to hurt yourself with a bow, let's face it. How many of us have ended up with a nice big welt on your arm?
Christ, I did it properly the wrong way around. I did. I went and bought a £70 compound and learnt in the back garden.
Yeah. But the thing is that, you probably disagree with this. You're quite a responsible adult. Yes, you are. Compared to some
I
individual.
try to be reasonably situationally aware
Yeah.
and
you
think
succeeded with
of
the trying
what can
bit.
go wrong.
Yeah, and this is the thing, and this is where clubs have the benefit. Yeah, you can
Yeah.
teach somebody to shoot a bow 30 minutes, really easy.
Yeah.
And they can have some enjoyment from that, and then you can sort of plant the seed of getting them involved.
Yeah.
And that's where I think you could really get like kids involved. If you get the kids involved, the adults will have a go, because it'll become, oh, Daddy, can you beat me, or can I beat you at shooting?
Oh, yeah.
But it's having the infrastructure that if you look on the NFAS site, there aren't actually that many coaches out there.
No. I mean, we're quite fortunate at Paget. We've got a fair few, and I think we've got, and Andy's doing his coaching course as well now.
Yeah. But how many people do you get in a year? And that's the thing. Is how many, there's clubs that do regimented coaching sessions.
Yeah.
We do a coaching course, which is we did teammates being flexible insofar as it's not every week, because we can't physically do that because of other commitments.
Yeah.
We'll do like 3 weeks and then have a week off and then a couple of weeks. But promoting the hobby, it doesn't, you don't see it.
No.
You don't see any kind of promotion. You know, I
Apart
doubt.
from when Disney launch a new film that's got archery in
like
it.
Brave or something like that. But you know, it's like I wonder. I think the shooting show wasn't that long ago at the NEC.
No, couple of 3 weeks.
Yeah, that would have been a perfect thing for NFAS or
Yeah.
R2GB to go to.
Yeah.
It would have
I
just
think NFAS more than archery GB because NFAS is
okay
more like a country sport.
yeah.
If
And
you
I
know
think
what I mean.
you know that's it. It opens up so many possibilities because you get contacts with the landlords, you get
Yeah.
contact with estates that will be thinking, oh, well, that's another stream,
Yeah.
a money stream coming in. You know, that's the sort of thing. But what we're forgetting, and this is the big thing to remember, is there are no paid NFAS
No.
people. Everybody's doing it as a volunteer
Same as IFA.
from ground level up. You know, from the people who are setting the courses,
Yeah.
people like myself who are coaches, the people running the organization. Everybody's doing this on top of other things.
They're doing it for the love of the sport.
That's right. And there's got to be a thing of there saying, actually, if you're wanting this to succeed, then you've got to kind of turn around and do something in return.
Yeah.
And that's, I think I said that on one of my podcast episodes. I said, look, go out and help. You know, if you want to, you know, good New Year's resolution, don't just sort of like stop being nasty to the trad guys or stop being nasty to the compound guys, the sighted guys. Think about actually how can you help out? You know, get in touch with your president of your club or your chair of your club and find out when the next work day is.
Yeah.
And just turn up and, you know, bring a stack of cakes so that you can keep the guys going. Everything is done on volunteers. You know, it's like I was saying about the range. You know, I've done that. Okay, I get self-satisfaction because I can go on it. Sharon can go on it. Son can go on it. I've also then got a facility that I can open up for the club.
Yeah.
But it's all kind of voluntary, you know, and I think we were incredibly lucky when we started Briar Rose that we got it up and running and we were able to put in a lottery fund.
Yeah.
And we managed to succeed in getting some of that lottery funding. And we got a lot of people coming in. We managed to afford bosses, got a target boss now. Target bosses are crazy. A 1,300 target boss, which is about 4.5 foot square for American listeners. That's £200.
It's since COVID, they absolutely went through the roof, didn't they, price wise?
Yeah. And, you know, when you think that we've got 1,300 bosses out.
Yeah.
And we're quite a small club, and there's a lot of clubs out there who've got
That's
far
what,
more.
nearly £3,000 just in 14 bosses.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2,800 quid.
And it's like, it's not a small, it's an easy sport to get into, but it's not a small sport for a club to be very affordable easily.
Yeah.
And this is what I'm saying is that I think maybe promoting it, but I think we've got to be really careful how we promote it. Going back to what I was saying previously, I think we need to get rid of the kind of thing of, oh, it's a pseudo hunting phrase, because we're not shooting hunting distances. It's not really set up. Most shots are not set up as hunting shots because you would. I don't hunt, but I know enough about it that if you've got a 3D quarter the way that some of the 3D quarters, you would never take that shot in a hunting circus because you can't guarantee what's it called, a humane kill,
An
or
ethical kill.
Ethical kill. Thank you, an ethical kill.
Well, I mean, there's one of the paper face bores. If you wanted to make the ethical kill, there is only one shot, and the window is about so high and so wide. Anything else is a messy wound.
But this is it. This is why I'm saying we are shooting a target sport. So I think in some ways that kind of definition of it being a pseudo hunting thing, not for the distances that we're shooting.
No.
And then maybe open up so that we're not just shooting animal faces, but have it so that we start shooting what I call novelty faces or dragons, dinosaurs, those sort of things.
That'd
Not
be
necessarily
brilliant.
not sorry necessarily zombies because I'm not a zombie
Yeah.
movie fan or stuff like that. But those sort of oh you're shooting a griffin or you're shooting oh I was going to say the
Well, I mean,
slithering snake
what
the big snake in one of the Harry Potters which
the
is
basilisk?
yeah you're shooting things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that would be a good way. You could, people have done, and they did this at the actual indoor champs. I really like the fact that they had zones. They had like a Jurassic zone, and they had a woodland zone, and they had an Arctic zone, and stuff like that. You could quite easily with the power of AI and stuff like that create some very nice non-real paper faces,
Yeah.
non-real animal paper faces. And again, that's something that then could be publicized
Yeah.
and as a bit of a light entertainment. You could do a themed Greek, ancient Greek monsters
Yeah.
or a themed dragon hunt aspects and stuff like
I
that.
quite like that.
Yeah, and this is what I mean. You could do those sort of things, and then it gets people into it.
Yeah.
And then you sort of say, oh yes, there is this other element to it if you want to try that.
Yeah.
But it's ways of just communicating and getting the message out there. I think there's about 6,500 members in NFAS,
Yeah.
which is tiny compared to, but of them, you probably, I think the biggest champs I've ever seen, I think there's been about 700 people. But if you look around and you look at the diaries, there's usually 3 or 4 shoots going on every
weekend. Well,
Yeah.
somebody did comment, I don't know if it was the official NFAS page or the other one, the unofficial page, that there seemed to be a shortage of, in the next few weeks, seems to be a bit of a shortage of shoots.
I think some of it might be down to when clubs course line.
Yeah.
Because for example, we're restricted. We only have.
I'd say you've got very tight restrictions on what you can do and when you can do, haven't you?
That's right. We can, as soon as it's deemed as spring and the nesting birds are starting to start nesting,
Yeah.
we can't do anything.
Right.
We have a window of opportunity basically from end of December through to this weekend to be able to do things.
So
We can-
it's not a small woodland you've got, is it? So
We've got about 35-ish acres.
yeah, it's a hell of a lot of work.
Yeah. Well,
Hell of
that's
a lot
why,
of work.
that's why what we do, we made a decision when we moved onto that site that there's 2 zones, the upper and the lower loop. And what we would do is each year we would do 1 loop. We might tweak the pegs
Yeah.
positions on the other loop, but we would reset 1 each year.
Yeah.
And
Makes it more manageable.
but when we do that, we then have to take the owners of the wood or the people that we actually rent it off
Yeah.
round that course for them to okay it. And then once they've okayed where it's going to be, then we can get to move it in.
Yeah.
And then after that's done, we have to then take them round again. And this year we've had quite a few trees down. We've been incredibly lucky. The bottom loop.
Yeah.
We had 1 tree land about 2 feet away from one of our 1,300
Wow.
bosses. And there's been quite a few trees down across the paths and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So we've been very lucky that none of the bosses got hit. And we've actually managed to use one of those trees and change one of the circuits so that we've got a number of gullies.
Yeah.
Well, we've actually managed to change the route now so we're not crossing any of those gullies.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so all the bridges that I built years ago, I can just hang up and then wait
Yeah.
until the next time round. But yeah, we do have restrictions, but that's it. That's the landlord that we have. That's
Yeah.
that's the problem. Some clubs are very lucky that they can do anything that they want. Other clubs,
So, I mean, we have to be very, very careful with arrow sitting trees.
yeah,
That's
we're
why
not allowed to.
no, we're not. The owners of the land come round and do regular inspections, and we're very lucky considering the urban area we're in
Mm.
to have access to the land we do to be able to rent that.
Because one of the things that we do, people turn around and said, "Oh, you can make this a really tight window shot." And I said, the problem being is that's fine for those archers who are capable of seeing the target, not the trees.
Yeah.
The archers that see the trees will hit the trees, and then we'll get into trouble. So we'd rather do it. The only trees that we don't have a problem with trimming or cutting back are elder, because they're classified as more of a weed.
Yeah.
And the reason we've got so many elders is because of the badger sets.
Ah.
But it's like with the targets, when we've put the 3D targets out, you'll know this. We wrap purple ribbon around the necks.
Yeah.
And people turn around and say, "Well, why do you do that?" It's like, well, we have badgers, we have foxes, we have deer in the wood.
What?
And it's to show you that is actually the target and not a real deer. And I remember somebody said, "Oh, but you don't have that many deer." And I went, "Well, actually, there's one there running down the fence line." And he went, "Oh, right.
Well,
okay,
that's
yeah, you
something
do."
Barry Cheadle has to do with his place as
Right.
well, isn't it?
Yeah, because he's got actually is it a flock or no, it's a herd.
Herd,
Of deer,
yeah.
herd of deer that are literally on his property.
Yeah.
It's where we actually stole the idea from, because I think he uses like grey. Oh no, it's gold or red ribbon around the neck.
Yeah.
And we
If
said,
the,
well, where
if the deer hasn't got a ribbon, it's a real deer.
yeah, and I've been there, and we've actually had to hold up a shoot before, because I was marshalling and was doing the photography for him and helping him out. And we had to hold the shoot when this herd of deer came across, and it came across one of the actual 3Ds, because it had seen it and thought it was one of them, and then
Wow.
stood there, and then it just carried on. Not as bad as what happened at Long Eaton, where they've had one of they've got a big stag 3D that got trashed because they had an actual stag decided it didn't like it.
There's been a few videos of those from the States, and the funniest one was one where it was in some guy's back garden. He'd got a 3D doe target.
Yeah, let me guess. What can happen there?
The middle of the rut, the white tail comes in, hits the back of it, the head falls off his 3D doe. And you just see the stag jump off, look at the stag.
What have I
Nope,
done?
it wasn't me, and trotted off again.
Yeah, I've been helping set one of the leafer courses before now, and I've called the other marshals that I'm working with and says, "Have a look at this target." And he goes, "What's wrong with it?" It says, "That's got deer hair all over the back of it." He went, "You what?" And I went, "Have a look." And he went, "Oh, okay, we know what's been going on there."
Yep.
Yeah. But no. Yeah, it is an interest, and this is one of the things I was saying to somebody today. The opportunities I've had to see some of the countryside
Yeah.
that is either private estates or just never get to see unless you happen to be the landowner.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I've got some amazing photographs and some amazing memories of wandering around. I did a Scottish Champs, and just as the horn went off, we were getting ready to shoot the target, and just as the horn went off, this beautiful red stag jumped up that had been leaning up against behind the boss, jumped up, ran, spotted the group there, turned around, ran this way, and then just leapt over a 4-foot high stone wall.
Wow.
And that's something that you
There was me thinking you were going to say you'd seen a wild haggis.
No, I'd rather them in the pan eaten, because I like haggis.
I love haggis. So tasty.
But this is what I mean, is that those kind of opportunities. I remember doing I think it was at Osmaston, and we were camping, and it had been a torrential day the day, really throwing it down. It had 600 competitors, and by the end of it, there was 150 left. Yeah,
Wow.
That would, and the following day was bright, beautiful sunshine, and I'd got up at like 6 a.m. and I just took my camera and I just walked around the course, because everything was closed down. It was the Monday, and I've got some beautiful photographs of the mist just beginning to form in the valleys and stuff,
Yeah.
and sunrises. So the opportunities are absolutely phenomenal, and that's probably why I enjoy the sport. Having that opportunity to be out in nature. There's loads of Instagram videos and YouTube videos where I'm just basically stood in the woods, and I just do a pan and say, "Yeah, this is our archery wood." And it's fantastic. I've been down there. I used to do a course check.
I'd say there's a few nice ones where you've been walking around just doing the course checking. You've gone live on Instagram, haven't you?
Yeah, But I had one episode, and you know where the pond is at the wood.
Yes.
Yeah. I'd gone down to check the shop by the pond, and there's a track that comes up along that we don't use that much.
Yeah.
And I happened to glance over, and there's a deer, and it's completely oblivious to me because you know I've got that old DPM army jacket
Yes.
that carries just about everything in.
Yeah.
And I'd been wandering around, and I knew there was nobody else because I was doing the course check before anybody was allowed out. And this deer, probably less than 6 feet away from me, just walked straight past me, and he didn't know that I was there. And it was just, you know, those kind of opportunities.
Yeah.
You know, you remember for the rest of your life.
Oh, yeah.
And it's that, and I think that's why I think field archery is so phenomenal.
Yeah.
And it's very, it's good for the mental health. It's good for your physical health because it's not massively strenuous. You're just getting your step counter in. In fact, I'm wondering how many steps I've done today actually because I've been wandering around. Just out of curiosity, I'm just going to check.
And you think if you're
See, I've only done just over 6,500 steps.
if you're practicing on a 40-yard target, every end you shoot, it's 40 yards there, 40 yards back.
Yeah.
That's 80 yards. You shoot 20 ends, that's 1,600 yards. That's 160 yards under a mile you've walked without even realising it,
Right.
without breaking a sweat.
Yeah. And this is what I mean is that it's a good, it's really good for just building that kind of stamina, being out and building
Yeah.
that fitness up. And it is, you know, you got your legs, you're carrying everything with you, you've got your upper body movements. So I think there's a physical aspect, but I think it's up here as well. I think there's been lots of studies about walking in woodland and how healthy that is.
Oh, the Japanese spent a fortune on a big study.
Hmm.
They call it woodland bathing, which is literally just sitting out in the woods. Well, you know what? I'd have told them that for 150 grand, never mind millions. Give me 150 grand, I'll tell you it does you good to sit in the woods.
But no, I think that can be really, you know, a beautiful appeal, especially because we've got quite small numbers at our club.
Yeah.
So you'll be down there and there'll be 4 or 5 people with you. And as I said, we've got like over 30 acres. You break off into maybe 1 or 2 groups.
Yeah.
So you can, you know, that I've sat just quietly in the wood when other people are shooting around.
Yeah.
Just watching them shooting around and just enjoying the time. Or as you said, we'll go on Instagram when I've been doing more like a course check and stuff like that. And I think that's another way that we can try and promote the hobby. Is just sort of like make people aware of what's going on, the work that goes on, and like the risk and the I'm going to say health and safety, because we do a check because you're in a woodland and, you know, we've had storms come through, you got branches hung up, stuff like that, you know, all of these little things. But there's a lot of work that goes into it. And that's why I say, you know, if you've got a club, you know, try and help it, try and support it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I don't know how long we've been talking for now.
Just over 3 hours.
When I said to you I didn't think we'd be talking that long, I said, oh, we do an hour and a half or a couple of hours.
I'm getting a habit of doing long podcasts now.
I think it's probably a good time to call it a day.
Yeah, well, when I first started and I was doing like 45 minutes an episode, and Si Thomas messaged me and said, for God's sake, Rich, you got to talk for longer. I needed to fill my day up.
I think that's one of the things that I've done is I've actually gone shorter with a lot of my podcasts because I'm trying to make them more topic specific.
Yeah.
And I think I find that for me, I can then structure it a bit better. But you'll know me, I use quite a lot of notes.
Yeah.
And I'll walk through things.
When I'm solo, they tend to be 45 minutes to an hour. But when I got guests on, like I say, I don't like to have it too structured. I just like to let's have a conversation, let's talk, let's see where it goes.
Yeah. But it works. It works well.
Well, I did one for What's the Latest with Shawnee Farrell. And we talked for over 4 hours, and the subject we covered was phenomenal. And I've had people message me and say, you know what, you talked about subjects and ask questions that I'd be scared to ask. And we had this really, really open and honest conversation, and it was fantastic.
Mm.
Really, really, really enjoyable.
Cool. But this is it. I think this is things like podcasts can work really well. I really like the push discussion ones that go on because they don't just talk about like the archery or the bear bow or setup or the hunting setup.
Yeah,
And I think that's one of the things that certainly where field's concerned, we can learn a lot from the like the trad hunters
yeah,
aspects where it comes to arrow setup, bow setup, shot sequences,
Oh,
and
yeah.
stuff like that. You know, the trad lab stuff and a lot of the stuff that the push put out is very, very good. And this,
It is.
you know, the bare bow projects and other like that. I think that's really interesting because you do have we were saying earlier about the conversations about equipment and technology and stuff like that, and it has moved on.
Yeah.
You know, it's constantly going on. You know, the carbon arrows are getting cheaper, they're getting more available. You know, limb dynamics, materials are changing. We were talking about tabs today.
Yeah,
All of those sort of things, and there's a huge community out there, and things like this podcast, mine, other podcasts, are a really good way of promoting that and
Yeah.
trying to get it out there. And that's what, you know, at the end of the day, a lot of the stuff that I do is I'm just trying to create stuff that I think might be of use.
Well, me, it was just talking about my journey I started, and I've got to push harder on that. I've got to get back onto it seriously now. But it's mine's kind of evolved, and
Yeah.
I just like to talk to people about shooting bows and arrows.
Yeah, it's like with the stuff that I've been doing, it's like I've been experimenting with YouTube and putting playlists together on, like I did a lot of 3D repairs.
Yeah.
I did some stuff on that, and I did one on how to rebuild a target boss and stuff like that. And that was actually quite interesting because I had a couple of guys in archery message me. One of them was a scout leader, and he said that
Yeah.
was really useful because he's shown that to the other scouts, so that the leaders, so they know how to now repair the bosses.
It's a really good resource.
Well, this is what I mean. It's useful, and that's what that's what I'd like it to be. I'd
Yeah.
like it to be as I don't want it to be like a promo for this item or this latest bow or that stuff, and because all the stuff that I test out, so I'm testing out a load of gloves at present.
Yeah.
I bought some different types of gloves. I'm trying those out. That stuff I bought.
Yeah.
I don't get sponsorship, and somebody was saying to me, we were talking about it at work actually, because I know somebody who does kind of sponsorship and YouTube and stuff
Yeah.
like that. They said, well, why don't you try and make some money using YouTube and sponsorship or YouTube and promotions? And I said, it's not what I set it out for. You know, maybe if it grows massively, I might try and do it, but I'm not really into the sponsorship. You know,
Yeah.
the gloves I've bought because I've had a bit of money. The 3Ds I've bought, and basically I'm testing them out. I'm showing them. I'm giving people an opinion on them.
I think it's one thing if somebody says, I'm sending you this, review it, be honest with it. But I think as soon as somebody is sponsored by somebody, they then lose credibility.
I think it's going to be a very slippery slope. It's like I
Yeah.
had some Eastern. Oh, I've got to get the name right. The carbons that we were testing when you were around that time. Legacies, carbon legacies.
Yes.
Yeah. I got sent some of them from Eastern because I was doing a review of them for Bow International.
Yeah.
And I got to say, they're actually a really nice arrow.
They are.
They are really nice. The worst thing is the inserts. I don't like the inserts they give because they've got a really small aluminium insert. But you can actually swap them out for a longer one.
That's the downside of the Skylons. Very short inserts and they haven't got deep blue grooves. So whereas Eastern and Gold tip inserts on hot melting, and it's rare I lose one. Skylon, if you hot melt them in, they are coming out.
Yeah.
You have to epoxy them in. And the same with the brass ones. Those 50 grain brass I've got
You're
in.
doing today.
Yeah, they're only the same size as the aluminium ones, just made out of brass. I weighed them. I meant to do a video of weighing them. and they were all within a grain.
Really?
Yeah,
That's pretty cool.
that's really cool considering I paid £8 for a dozen.
This is what I mean. Is like I got sent them, and I was a bit nervous about it. These shafts,
Yeah,
and I did the review, and I sent it in, and they went, "Yeah, that's fine," but because basically it's an accurate. I was sent them
yeah.
to test them, but yeah,
That's
when
not
you
like them saying, "Here's a couple of grand. Write us a good review of these." There's a big difference.
yeah,
Yeah.
and Lee Ankers did something for me ages ago. He sent me some paints to try out. He had these snot paints.
Oh,
for
the
pressing.
goblin snot paints. Yeah,
They're really nice. I found that the 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 white took a few more coats to really get it to bite.
yeah,
But I did that for a load of Sharon's arrows to do with cresting on, and I quite like them.
yeah,
They seem to work quite well without being too heavy. Because I found that sometimes if you're using paints, they can be a bit too thick and they're a bit too heavy and
Yeah.
too much weight. But those were quite nice, and yeah, that worked. But otherwise, you know, the like the thermos flasks, the boots, the clothes, and stuff like that, I'll buy it and I'll
yeah,
test it because I don't get a sponsorship. I don't want to go down the Patreon route because it then means I feel guilty if I'm not putting something out
yes, yeah,
there. I want that to be under my control.
yeah.
Um,
See, I don't have to worry about sponsorship. I'm such a potty mouth bugger. Nobody'd want to get near me anyway.
you've been quite reserved on this one.
I have.
Yes, it's obviously my calming influence. I'm trying to think how long we've known each other. It's been a good few years now.
Yeah. I
7 years?
started shooting the end of 2014.
So I
Joined
was-
Paget in 2015. I think the first time I actually spent a long time talking to you was one of Paget's open shoots. Wayne Chandler and his daughter Tabitha.
yes,
And I took a half decent photo of you all.
that's right. I remember that, and because I remember you saying, "Oh, I want to tag around with him because I've been following his blog for a
Yeah.
year." Yeah.
Yeah, and
Because I
just,
always remember you turning up at Briar Rose one time because Joe was saying, "Oh, I want you to introduce," said to me, "I want you to introduce to a friend of mine, Rich." And it's like, so we walk into the car park and Joyce, this is, and you just say, "Hi, Rob, how are you?" I was like, "You know each other." I was like, "Yeah."
I don't think Wayne's been doing a lot of shooting lately.
I don't get to see that many people now.
No.
I don't get to that many shoots. I think I'm doing the Black Arrow.
Yeah.
I'm doing Centura. I think I might be down for Deville. I'm not sure. Develle's a bit of a hike for us because we're just the wrong end of. It's about an hour and a half drive.
Yeah.
But yeah, as I said, it's family commitments. If either I'm coaching,
Yeah.
Sharon's coaching, or we're visiting family, or we're doing other things, or we're doing scout camps or stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, we are pretty busy.
I mean, I've only booked in for one this year. That's,
Liberty.
yeah.
Yeah, I was a surprise.
But
We haven't released our dates yet, and we're hoping to
I've
get that finalized at the AGM next week.
booked in as TB.
Ooh.
I'm shooting Liberty single string.
How many arrow shafts have you got? No, I've just taken the mic.
Oh no, I'm going to need a lot.
Problem with Liberty is it's such sandy soil that if you do
Yeah.
miss and it goes into the ground, it's just buries and
But-
it keeps going.
Their marshals are amazing. It's like they're fucking arrow whisperers
I think they've probably sussed.
where they go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's why
Or they've got trained moles.
no, it's why we set the course now, and so that we get a fair idea where arrows are going to fall. Yeah, because by doing that course, I think we're looking probably in August or July, August time.
Yeah.
That course will have been shot, or the new half of it will have been shot for 6 months.
Yeah.
And I'd love to put on more courses, but we've got 20 odd archers in our club. Trying to get more than one
Yeah.
shoot in a year is quite hard. And I think that's the thing. That's the big thing, is that if we don't do a shoot, then we've got problems where finances are concerned.
Yeah. But you're not allowed to shoot bank holiday weekends, are you? I know you certainly weren't. If it was a
No, we're
bank
not.
holiday weekend, the woods were closed to you.
That's right. We have access every weekend in the month except for the second weekend, which
Yeah.
is usually one of our maintenance days or stuff like that, because the site is being used by others. And then
Oh, you're still allowed to go in to do maintenance, though?
if we okay it,
Yeah.
and then the bank holiday weekends, yes, because they don't do events over the bank holiday
Yeah.
weekend, so that gets closed down. So like May, we
Of
lose
course,
2 weekends.
if you're on site, they have to have someone on call, don't they?
Right.
Yeah.
So last weekend, we weren't sure whether last Sunday they would be allowed to be open because of the high winds,
Yeah.
because the number of trees they've had down. I think they're a little bit concerned as to whether there's any branches hung up, but also when a tree does come down, it does a lot of damage to the root
Yeah.
systems of the surrounding trees. So you've got to factor that in.
Yeah.
And there's all these elements, but yeah, we're restricted in that respect. But that's why we keep our membership fees down. There's
Yeah.
other clubs that have got a far higher membership fee, but they can shoot nearly 24/7.
Yeah.
That'd be a lovely situation to be in, but
Oh, yeah. I haven't renewed my membership at White Mark this year. I think I only went down once or twice last year. It's a bit of a hike down to Woburn Common, but they've got it's like a bigger version of Paget there, Woodies. It's a bigger version of Paget, and I've never seen a collection of 3Ds like it. But I think 25% of EFA members are members of White Mark.
this is it. But it's like it's tough. It's not easy, and it's trying to find land now is got a lot harder, because a lot of farmers or landowners have tended to parcel up their woodland, and they're selling off at like 3 acres lots because they can
Yeah.
make a lot of money for it. 'Cause
Oh,
like
yeah.
3 acres of woodland around here is probably about £70,000.
Yeah. And that's with no planning permission or anything. It's just somewhere where somebody could go and walk the dog.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's sad, really.
But it is the way of things.
Yeah. Right. We've been going almost 3.5 hours. People need to know where to find you. Where can they find you, please?
Sat here. 'Cause I'm talking to you.
Ba-dum.
Thank you.
Oh, look, tumbleweed.
Yeah, I thought it was a reasonable joke. All right. Offthearrowshelf.com is the website.
Yeah.
But you'll find me on Instagram, YouTube, Twitter as was. There's X now, though I don't tend to use that much. I am on Threads as well. But basically just search offthearrowshelf.com and all the links are
And
off there.
up it'll come.
Yeah, and I'm on email as I'm going to try and remember that. I'm actually on Yahoo. It's off the
Yes,
Arrow Shelf at
it's
Yahoo.
your Yahoo. Yeah.
Yeah, it's because I set that up so long ago that Gmail didn't exist. Yeah, it's off the Arrow Shelf, all one word, at yahoo.co.uk. But as I said, pop onto the website.
That works especially well if you've still got a dial-up modem.
Yeah. I actually found an old dial-up modem when I was clearing
Wow.
out some of the old boxes, because I've got, because I work in IT.
Yeah.
And Sharon works in IT. We had, I was programming web pages in 1998 using like Notepad and really
Wow.
simple stuff. So that's when I started doing web pages and stuff like that.
Good grief.
Yeah. It's around about, she was doing her masters and I was doing my masters. But offthearrowshelf.com WordPress site. I've had it for years, and there's a contacts list on there. That's the easiest way of getting in touch with me.
Yeah, so that's been going over 10 years now. 'Cause like I say, I found it. That's how I found Paget, and I joined Paget in 2015.
Yeah.
We're now 2025, so yeah, that's been going over 10 years. A lot of good resources on there as well.
There's a lot of, not that many shoot reports now, but there is, if you're interested in target panic or stuff like that, there's some stuff on there that I've written over the years. I'm experimenting with YouTube, doing short YouTubes and doing like those playlists and stuff like that. We'll see how that goes.
Actually, this is well out of your comfort zone, because you never normally go in front of the camera, do you?
No, I hate being in front of the camera.
I do, but the only way I can do it is just keep doing it. It helps. This only uploads in, because I'm using the webcam. He's only uploading 720 anyway, so
I used to do photography when I was younger, when I was 14, 15.
yeah,
I used to sit in the hides for hours on end, or go for walks with my camera. And I've always enjoyed being behind the camera.
yeah,
And it's one of the things with the podcast. This is one of the things with like doing the Instagram live feeds. Occasionally, I'll swap it around and talk to the camera and then go, because my view is actually what the people want to see is what's going on out there.
yeah.
And yeah, that's the thing. So yeah, sitting in front of a camera is just horrible.
I only started doing the YouTube ones when I was like doing the Zoom ones.
Mm.
And I thought, you know what, sod it, I'll just put them up on YouTube anyway.
Yeah,
I've got to get myself out of my comfort zone.
YouTube's interesting because I tend to create a YouTube recording
Yeah,
using something like Canva to create a YouTube from the podcast, and then if it's a shoot report, I'll just slot in photographs from
Yeah.
the event.
I'm not particularly good with technology, so I've tried Canva. I just can't wrap my head around it. I think I get bored of it too easily.
I think the thing is, because I teach how to use it, it comes, and because I've seen the iterations since 1998
Yeah.
or earlier, and seen the variations, there's not an awful lot new. It's just progressive steps. And
Yeah.
it's like, oh yeah, okay. So this is just like this used to be, or this is just like this used to be.
Yeah.
And people go, what? And I go,
I,
yeah, don't worry.
I think I just lack the patience for it. It's like, yeah, that's enough of that. Let me find some shooting videos on YouTube now.
I think it's just down to how I structure my head and
Yeah.
and do things.
Yeah.
But I'm a wet film. You should shoot wet film, so it's like
Proper
you'd
cameras.
have like 24, maybe 36 shots, 26 to 38 if you were really careful when you were loading. So I would sit there for ages and making sure that everything was focused in and being for that.
When they were SLRs, not DSLRs.
Yeah, I've still got mine. I've still got.
I got a friend from the home counties. He does a lot of proper wet film photography still. Yeah, when you had to actually know, you had to have an eye for a picture, and you had to know how to compose it, and you couldn't just rely on auto settings, press and throw in AI to edit it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I do use the auto settings on my Nikon SLR.
Yeah.
Just because the wildlife and the landscape settings are brilliant on it. But for my digital, I cheat a bit with that one. But my favorite camera is an old Olympus OM1, which I used to be able to just pick up and shoot with.
Yeah.
But I had that from, I think I bought it on my 15th birthday, second hand. And I've still got it now.
I mean,
still be a camera to pick up quite happily.
James will take photos on wet film and then take a photo of that on his digital to upload it onto Instagram. But without even looking at who the post from, I can tell when it's one of his photographs.
What's interesting,
his standout,
is how amazing these things have become. The mobile
these are incredible.
Yeah, and the quality you can get. Because I was talking to you about using them as a coaching aid or using a tablet as a coaching aid, and just recording somebody and being able to play it back.
Yeah.
Because they're fantastic for that. Just the ability to slow it right down and zoom in and actually show somebody that they're doing that rather than that. Things along those lines. Because what you think you're doing is not necessarily what you're actually doing.
Yeah.
But yeah. No, it's been good. Thank you very much for having me as a guest. Appreciate it.
It's an absolute pleasure. And of course, you've been a guest. We can have you at the Supercast in the end of June.
Yeah, just let me know when it is and where it is, and I'll make it.
Final weekend in June.
Is that what it's looking like?
Yeah.
Where have you decided where it's going to be?
Down at Alex's place in Outwell, which is just into Norfolk over the Cambridgeshire border.
Right. Okay.
Possibly 3-4 miles over the Cambridgeshire border into Norfolk.
I shall speak with she who has my social calendar and try and arrange it and try and get down there.
It makes it sound like you have a full entourage there.
No, it's just I have I have a calendar on the fridge in the kitchen. In fact, you've seen it.
Yeah.
There's a column for each of us
Yep.
and the activities that we're doing. And I do not control that calendar. I have a wonderful wife of come June 25 years.
Wow. Silver anniversary.
Yeah, well, we've been together come June, what, 33 years?
Wow. That's
Yeah.
going. That's good going.
Yeah.
Really good going.
She would have been let off for good behaviour by now.
I was going to say 9 years. 9 years. She'd have had probation for murder.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that. We have broken 3.5 hours.
Okay.
And there was
Sorry.
you saying we wouldn't do a long one.
Yeah, I didn't think we would. Anyway.
Right, I'm a bad influence, aren't I? That's all it is.
Yes.
Folks, you know where to find me. Just Google Archery Geek Outdoors and I'll turn up somewhere. Right, until the next time, where I camera somewhere up there as Niver's not pointing at me. Hello. Remember, stay safe, shoot straight. Bye-bye.